And we're live here at the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by the fine fellows here of I Was a Teenage Zombie. We have George Seminara, Craig Sabin.
Hey.
Hello, and Gregory Lamberson.
Hello.
35 years ago, this movie came out.
Oh,
wow.
Which means we shot it 33 years ago. 37 years ago.
37 years ago.
I was going to say, wow, we shot it after it came out. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a first, I believe.
And there was no lawsuit.
Exactly. So when's the last time all three of you have been together?
37 years ago.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Robert and I have worked on a few things. You know, he was in Slime City Massacre. George and I are Facebook friends, but haven't seen each other face to face easily since before I left New York City.
George was telling us that he watched the movie for the first time since it came out.
Yep.
So what did you think of it?
Well, I was shocked that like we used the place where my parents had their first date with their ill-fated marriage of 6 or 7 years. But that's where where the gang hang out at Hinch's soda shop. And then
I got that location.
There you go. It was a weird thing.
That was Bay Ridge, right?
Yeah, the Bay Ridge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then where I learned how to ride a two-wheeler is the alleyway, Hunts Lane in Brooklyn, where Mussolini gets caught by the other gangsters, and where he
with a cigarette flick from
that's right
from heaven. Yeah,
from Salametta, he twists his head right around.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. And so that was kind of weird. Seeing my basement before I renovated it. It was it had enthusiasm. I'll go for that. What about you guys? What's your memory? Since I just have a fresh one.
Yeah, Craig. Or should I call you Robert? I don't know. He's calling
you can call me. My wife calls me Craig.
Okay,
that's my name. So
middle name.
Middle name. So calling me Craig gives you certain privileges.
All right, okay.
Which
going really well here.
Yeah, exactly. You just got lucky.
Every Christmas.
Yeah, my memory of the movie, and I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but I remember it standing up pretty well. The jokes are still working. The sort of campy aspect of it is working. The soundtrack is way better than the
movie of its own.
Yeah, just awesome. And of course, every time I watch it, I'm sort of taken back in time to when we're shooting it, which was, overall a very fun time for me. So I just really enjoy it's a fun movie to watch, and I'm not in it too much, so I don't get too soured on it.
Oh, how about yourself, Greg? Both as a movie and the experience, watching it, because I think it would be hard to watch it as a movie when you make it, and to separate that from your memories of making it.
It's totally a home movie for me at this point. And I remember everyone in it as looking like they did at that time. So I don't know who these two gentlemen are that we hired to play cast members many years later.
I was going to say, there's just too much hair in that movie. There's too much hair.
So much hair.
Not enough scalp.
Yeah, there should have been more scalp. That's definitely how it should have been. Much more scalp. Actually, I had a memory though. I had a friend who I was at the HB studio with when I was pretending to be an actor, and he came in to audition for the part of the bird, and he went on to some success, unlike the rest of us. It was Chris Noth, and he couldn't ride a motorcycle, and he didn't know where he could get one. So the next guy who came in for the job, he was like, "Hey, whatever you need, motorcycle, I got it." Everything. And he got the part, because he could ride a motorcycle, of which he does not ride a motorcycle in the movie. He just kind of glides to a stop and
because the motorcycle didn't work.
Yeah,
the motorcycle didn't work, so we had to push him.
Yeah, and we had to do post sound on everything.
Couldn't afford
But
gas.
that bird, the guy who played the bird, Kevin Nagel, he went on to do quite a few things.
Yeah, he played a cop on Law and Order. He played the villain in Law and Order. He played the dead guy on Law and Order. He did a lot of Law and Order.
He played the Irish mafia guy who puts the hit out on battling Jake Murdoch in the Daredevil TV series. He's played a number.
That's right. That's right.
Tough guys.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, as someone not involved in the movie and watching it again for the interview, I really enjoy it. Not just because the three of you guys are here, but no, I think it's really fun. I think it's cool that it has like it has like an innocence to the movie, even though it's about zombies and murder and there's like a weird rape death scene. But it's it feels like a it doesn't feel like a mean spirited movie. It's innocent, it's fun, and I thought it really worked.
It's almost like a dead end kids movie.
Without a doubt.
Filtered through
doing every shtick.
Yeah.
Every shtick available.
Who used to say shtick 100 times a day? Big Al from The Rock. It's shtick.
Speaking of somebody who went on to do stuff.
Strange stuff. Big Al from The Rock was either Rosencrantz or Lieberman. I think he was Lieberman, right?
Correct.
The heavier guy.
Yeah.
Who has a small part in two of my films. He's the video store owner in Slime City and the coroner in Undying Love, for which he was adamant that I pay him. I said, I don't have any money. He said, listen, he insisted that I give him like a 20 just so he felt like a paid actor. But he went on to he played the strangest character on Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, he
appeared several times on the boardwalk driving a golf cart and would always stop and shoot the shit with Steve Buscemi. It's like a role that if there was an arc, I missed it. But he was also credited in there as the Yiddish dialogue coach.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes.
They do some heavy Yiddish in real life. I bumped into him and his partner, his wife, I'm not sure. And they were arguing on the subway platform in Yiddish, so I had to listen in because, coming from the Lower East Side, I have a little smattering of Yiddish. So I'm listening to these two like bicker. And then he looks over at me and he goes, "Oh, hello." He becomes so like actorly. Oh, yes. This is my friend George. We were
channeled Zero Mostel.
His death scene is amazing in the movie.
A highlight for sure. And it immediately precedes my dialogue scene.
True.
That's me asking to buy the weed for the big high school dance, Neal.
Oh, I did. I actually thought I caught you at the very beginning, just kind of standing in the grass, and I actually did not pick that up that was you later on in the movie.
I had a speaking role.
Oh, you were perfect. You were perfect.
And I was pressed into service on the day because the guy they cast didn't show up.
Chris Noth.
No, also Chris Noth was John Michaelakis, I guess, or whatever he wants to be called there. He said, well, he's really old. And I say, he's like 3 years older than me. And he's like, oh, but he's really old. I mean, you're supposed to look like you're in high school. I said, well, if you make him the bird, then it'll be funny because he's so much older than we are. Like, what? But
yeah, like the
couldn't ride a motorcycle and couldn't get us one, working or not.
So, working dazed and confused.
Greg, you said you got the location for the malt shop. Like, how did you get that?
I used to eat there all the time because I lived 2 blocks away in a little studio apartment where Robert Craig eventually lived with me as well. And I took it upon myself to find this location. And then because that went over so well, I took it upon myself to cast the role of Chucky. And Robert was not the first person I went to for this. When I got involved, I brought my friend Peter Clark on. I was production manager. He was assistant camera. And I recommended an actor who worked with me at one of the movie theaters. This guy was sort of a wannabe Eddie Murphy. And the audition went horribly because he couldn't read. Literally, he was illiterate. And we had to sit here like we were sweating as he was trying to get through 2 or 3 words. So I felt like my credibility was shot. And I said, okay, I have to get these guys somebody who can at least read. And that's how I brought Robert into the show.
Yes, the reader.
That's a ringing endorsement, Craig. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, one of the best red rolls ever.
Fantastic. Variety, 4 stars. What
Every
Four
word
stars.
pronounced correctly.
What a reader.
I mean, there are some, you do a lot of definitions there.
Exactly. And do
so
them fast. Do them fast.
You do, really. Very snappy.
That scene's great, by the way. With the policeman when you're being interrogated, that whole scene is very fun.
That guy was Steve Reedy, and I went to him for Slime City, and he said, "Well, what's it about?" And I told him. He said, "I don't want to do any more of this horror shit." So I cast somebody else.
He had great delivery. I like this guy. Yeah.
That was a performance, boy.
Yeah. So how did you get involved, George?
Well, he Greg let it out of the bag. Pretty much every single person at one time or another worked at the same movie theater chain. We all worked there at one point or another. And we would talk a lot about movies. So Jim, who has the solo writing credit, and John Michaels and I would go to see a lot of movies together. And we knew everybody. So in those days, we didn't pay for any other movie theater. Right? If you want to see a movie anywhere in the city, you told your manager, I want to go there. And then once you had the relationship, which I was able to milk 20 years after I'd stopped working in the movie theater, if I saw somebody I knew working the door and I wanted to see the movie, it was like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And they'd look at me and say, "Oh yeah, come in." But we worked together and we watched movies together. And so we started talking about like, what could we make? And we had worked on a film, John and I had worked on a film called Splatter University, where the school colors are blood red. Classic. And we started talking about this film. And Jim didn't want to work on it if he couldn't get solo writing credit, which is why there's the weird credits on the thing. He was very serious about his writing. And every week I would give him 20 or 30 pages of dialogue and scenes that needed to be in the film. And so at one point we had like a 400-page script and then pared it down to 90 pages.
No, it was never 90 pages.
Well, what is it?
120 pages when I met John Michaels to make Xerox copies. And I told him it was too long. He said, "Oh no, it's going to be snappy. It's going to go like this." And that's why we shot 2 huge sequences that didn't make it into the film.
Yeah, there you go. But I have a 96-page one.
They didn't show you some scenes then.
No, we did. And then, of course, if you remember, anytime we got into a problem where we thought the narrative was wrong or we were wearing the wrong clothing, we would immediately write a scene to fix it, which we shot it. And did you ever see the assembly edit?
No.
It was like 3 hours and 20 minutes. It was embarrassing. It was like a Scorsese film. It was like just, oh my God,
Irishman.
so many scenes.
No, it wasn't just like this.
No.
John told me.
Some of the scenes are pretty peppy, but when you see 12 scenes where the dialogue is peppy and you only needed one, it's not that peppy.
Yeah.
And actually, Greg, how did you get involved? Like, how early on?
So my story, Neal, and it dovetails with what George says, is that Robert and I became friends at Cinema One on 3rd Avenue and 59th Street in Manhattan, which we called the Cinemas. I thought you were the Beekman, George. Were you the Cinemas too?
Oh, I was. Cinemas were my main theater.
Right. So George was before me. He wasn't there when we were there, just as he went to SVA before me. So we just missed each other. But Robert and I worked there, and on my very first night on the job, having just moved to New York City, I worked with a girl named Alice Martin, who was Jim Martin, the eventual screenwriter credited person's sister. And one of the staff members, Roberto Gomez, Robert, you Christian Scientist, he was teasing her saying, "That movie's never going to be finished." And so I'm like, "What movie?" And it's Splatter University. So I'm so jazzed that on my first night on the job in my new city, I've met somebody who's in a slasher film. Like, this is what it's all about for me. I was so excited.
What you came for.
And then a year later, I was working at a different theater in Times Square, and I was walking by the Criterion. And back then they used to have these upright boxes that were like phone booths, except they had VCRs in them. And they would show trailers on the sidewalk. And in Times Square, you can imagine these really loud audience would gather around and judge the trailers. It was the equivalent of everybody watching a trailer online the day it drops, except you're standing on the street with people and getting their reactions. It was so cool. And there I am looking at George Seminara before we got to know each other. So I saw the movie, and then maybe another year later, I'm still working at the same theater. John Michaels came, and as George explained, he was schmoozing his way in through a free ticket through the ticket taker, who introduced him to me as the big director. So I'm like, oh, what did you work on? He said, I was assistant director on this movie, Splatter University. Oh, you worked on that? I saw that. Oh, you saw that? Back then, movies were pretty obscure, and they had their little run in a theater, and that was it. So if somebody saw your film and they weren't related to you somehow, that stroked your ego. So he was very excited, and he said, oh, yeah, I'm about to direct my own first film. And I said, oh, I got to work on it. So, well, I can't pay you. I said, I'll quit my job. I don't care. And so I brought my friend in, and that night we went to a production meeting. I think John and Jim were roommates at this decrepit building in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn or Queens?
In Brooklyn.
Oh, in Brooklyn. Oh, that was a horrible apartment.
Yeah, it was like an isolated building in a deserted block. It was the setting for a movie. And we had a production meeting with way too many beers, and that's how I got on. And I didn't meet George until we were on set. And George, I will tell you now, the weird thing about dichotomy about the crew is there were all those older guys, slightly older, obviously, who had some experience. And then there were the rest of us, me, Robert, Pete Clark, Dora, who worked as an assistant director, who were there to learn. And of the older guys, probably because you were an actor and had some downtime, George was by far the most accessible guy and was always sharing stories as he does and giving me little set pointers. And after the film, got me a couple of corporate PA gigs. So, George, I have actually always looked to you as sort of a mentor. And that's the truth. And I've always tried on my films or on films I've worked on with other people to look out for those people who've never been on set before and to try and help them all along.
Thank you. Pay it back. Pay it forward. That's what it's all about.
And along the same line, then, I'd like to blame you for what my life has become.
Oh, I'm a married fellow. Her life is not any better. Trust me. At least you made feature films. You know, I make documentaries, so it's a whole different world.
But you've won an Emmy.
I have. And a Peabody.
And you directed the Ramones a bunch of times. So.
Yep. Oh, a bunch of times.
Not that the Ramones music isn't it, but do you know how like they got so many like cool musicians to do the music for the movie?
Richard Hirsch.
That's right.
Right?
Ricky Hirsch.
Ricky Hirsch.
Ricky Hirsch, who's trying to get a movie made of Buster Keaton and Fatty Arbuckle's time together in Brooklyn.
Oh, a romance.
A love story. And he knew a guy that ended up being somebody I knew, and his name was Robert Singerman. And Robert Singerman had a very kind of dodgy career as a band manager. He was a great guy, but literally, you can ask any band that ever was in New York if he managed them, and they will say, yes, he did. REM, he managed them for like a month. James Brown for like a half a year. King Sunny Ade and his Juju Men. Yes, for one tour, he managed them. He just managed everybody. And at the time, we coalesced to needing a soundtrack deal. That was the way we were going to pay for the music, because music can be very, very pricey and time consuming. So we're going to pay for the music by getting tracks that weren't used on records mostly. And so all those bands he managed at that exact moment in time.
Did they not pay for those songs though? I thought it was like 50% of the budget was the movie and 50% was the soundtrack, because they were talking about the soundtrack the whole time. It was something they at least had planned out from the beginning.
Right. The idea was that we're going to have cool music. We didn't know what the cool music was going to be. And when Bob Singerman got involved, he called up his buddies at Enigma Records And Enigma said, "Oh, we'll put it out. It'll be great." Right. And so that's how we got the money to pay the artists. And when I did a film called Billy Strayhorn Lush Life, and I needed a soundtrack, and I couldn't afford the exorbitant prices that the Duke Ellington people were going to pay me to do new versions, use the old versions recordings, that I just recorded the whole album myself. And I got big name jazz artists. Elvis Costello sings a song on it, just so I could do the exact same thing. So the record company paid for all the music, paid for all the rights for the music for us to use in the film, which is what we did there, except for one freaking thing. The song I sing and play on and wrote, it's only on the movie, not on the freaking soundtrack, because you can only fit a certain amount of records on songs on a record. Fuckers.
Well, I remember you were upset at the time because Ricky had one song he wanted to use, and you wrote that song specifically for the movie. And for a little while, it looked like they weren't going to use it, and instead they spliced them. Right? They played half of each one in the end credits.
Correct.
And I think the lesson here, Neal, is everyone wants to be a musician. Nobody wants to do what they're doing. Everyone just wants to jam. They want to jam.
Right. And all musicians want to be in the movie. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we want everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody wants everything all the time.
That's the moral of the story for today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apologies to Michelle Yeoh.
How about the theme song itself? Then it becomes a video that plays on MTV.
Well, I take blame for that. I'd been taking photographs of bands, and music videos were kind of new. So bands would come up to me and goes, "Hey man, can you do my music video?" And I would say, "Yeah, sure." Without knowing how to do it. And so I had made about 10 at that point. And there had been another version, but they didn't shoot. They didn't understand how to make it, so they didn't have any playback. So it was just them miming to music that wasn't playing. So it looked like the band that's in the movie, I Was a Teenage Zombie, the band sequence, where they're obviously playing one song. Each player is playing a different song to the song that's playing, and to each other. And so I think we managed to cobble together about $1,100, and we did that video for $1,100. And I got all these go-go dancers to be in the video. And they were like giddy for the Fleshtones. And it was just shocking that it was on MTV as much as it was. I think it was because the singer for the Fleshtones had a show called The Cutting Edge on Sunday nights.
Did that help the movie, having a music video on MTV?
No, I don't think so. What do you guys think?
No, it's been a fun curiosity to find years later.
Yeah, I think it was a timing issue, right? The movie came out, then the record came out, then the video came out. So there was you couldn't see the movie in the theater anymore. It hadn't come out on video yet. The record came out, and then there was all the nonsense with the record, and then the video came out 2 months later. And so that's why I was surprised that it got added to MTV. It was cool.
William McConnell in the chat wants to know if you guys still talk to some of the other cast members, like Mussolini and the Bird.
Well, Mussolini died. He was 60 when we did the movie, I think. A lot older than he looked.
It was all those marriage Jehovah's. I get you married Jehovah.
Either, I quote him to this day,
either or either.
Or you're very knave.
You're very knave. Yeah, he passed, right?
Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But George has been in touch with a number of these folks, right, George?
I have, a couple of people anyway. I picked up the Bird in my car one day. He was trying to get a cab. I picked him up. He didn't know who I was until I dropped him off.
That leads into my story. It's perfect. One of the gals in the film was Linnea Benson, who played Hildy. And I had gotten Mike Lackey, who's known for Street Trash, to do the special effects because he was in my class at SVA. And originally he and John had agreed that they were just gonna do Incredible Hulk green makeup. And then on set, Pete Clark said, "What, that's it? Why don't you put some oatmeal on his face or something?" So they did put oatmeal on him. That's what the rotting skin was, oatmeal. The big rape scene, twists her legs up.
Yeah.
Linnea was the actress, and he was really enthusiastic spraying the blood. And when we called cut, when John called cut, he wanted to keep going. And at that point, she blew up and she said, "Cut it out, you misogynistic twerp."
Yes. You misogynist twerp.
It was the first time I'd ever heard the word misogynistic used, and I had to look it up. But it was tense, and he backed off, and we resumed shooting, but it stayed tense. Well, after we wrapped shooting, I ran into her on the street like a month later, and she was with two good-looking, preppy guys. You know, she was out on the town with two fellas, and I said, "Oh, hey, Linnea." And she turned around and she looked at me with a blank stare, like she just turned dead. She was like, "Yes." No recognition at all. I just said, "Well, never mind." Well, 10 years or so later, I was working at a video store on the Upper West Side called Movie Place, and she was a customer there. And we had both put on a few pounds. We weren't no longer our athletic selves. And she came with her boyfriend, still very nice looking. And I'm taking care of her, and I see the name. So I didn't even recognize her. I said, "Oh, Linnea. We worked together on a film like 10 years ago." And she looked at me. Now she's got emotion. She goes, "Was I a bitch?" And I said, "Well, yeah." She goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And we had the nicest conversation. And I look forward to seeing her anytime she came into the store. But it's weird when someone you've worked with just totally doesn't recognize you. And it's not like it's 2 years later. It's a short period of time later.
All right.
What was the other girl's name? Who plays? Gwen Gershell, right?
Yeah.
Gershell?
She was always knitting on set.
Yeah. Well, I would bump into her all the time because she lived near me in the East Village, and she was Glenn Close's body double on like 6 movies. Wow. That was her thing.
Cool.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Craig, do you keep in touch with anyone?
I don't. I did take out a restraining order on 3 or 4 of them, but apart from that, Greg was my contact to the film, and you know, I've been in touch with Greg over the years, but I've not been in touch with really anyone else. I think I see him on Facebook every once in a while, but I'm from Florida, and Facebook is a real problem for me to get on because everyone's crazy there. So you know, I just backed off social media generally, and I haven't really been in touch with anyone.
True.
William also says to him it's by far the greatest horror comedy of all time.
It's you know, yeah, exactly. It's I feel like it's a precursor to Shaun of the Dead, like that kind of a thing. But one of the things I like about the movie is, you know, the scenes are very exquisitely constructed and comedically constructed, so that there's lots of, you know, twists and unexpected things that go in various directions. But it's not, you know, it's not just to keep the movie moving forward. It's to provide a little entertainment value, and you know, I think it succeeds. It's a fun movie.
I agree. All of the boy scenes, like the fly scene, I got to tell you, we shot that fly scene like 11 times. We wanted to make sure that we were all going, you know, with as goofy as possible, all looking in different directions as this fly zooms around.
Yeah, and then somebody says, "Oh, let's have Chucky look at the fly, and everyone else be one step behind." So you know, and that wound up being the cut that made it into the movie. We were improvising bits, you know, on the set.
Improvising shtick.
What the hell's wrong with you? Don't you know?
It's shtick.
I think the whole group, they seem like a real group of friends, like they actually know each other, and there's like a chemistry there, and I think that definitely adds to it. Which,
I think
if
we all
that's
got
not
along
there,
really well.
it definitely takes away from the movie.
Yeah, there's no.
William, have you seen Killer Rack?
I have, yeah.
No, William,
Oh.
who said I Was a Teenage Zombie is by far his favorite horror comedy.
Oh, I see.
Favorite.
Yeah. He also mentioned that George had returned his phone call back in 2004, and he never thanked him, and he was stunned by this.
Well, George is a lonely man.
My life sucks. I'm so lonely.
Jimmy McGuire says he watched it for the first time on HBO Max. It's so much fun, which we should mention. You can watch it on HBO Max
For like 7
Because
years.
it was bizarrely acquired by the Criterion Channel.
Yeah, it was on the Criterion Channel for years.
And well, they're still the ones who then licensed it to HBO Max. I was on a Criterion Channel Facebook thread or something where somebody was complaining about some of the dogs that they release. And they were talking about how you don't realize that sometimes we have to buy films in a package. And suddenly things were clicking to me why the Criterion Channel would specifically choose this film. Because it's not what you would expect from the Criterion Channel.
I'm just curious as to why, like what other films were in that package that they purchased Teenage Zombie.
I can share.
Oh, great. I'd love to
now
hear
the
it.
story can be told. We all worked at a movie theater company, and the company's called Cinema 5. And they were started by some of the partners of what was known as the Janus collection.
Right.
And Janus, that collection, and what they were able to get by selling the long-term leases on the movie theaters, became the Criterion collection. And Criterion existed originally for laser discs. So, as I joked to my friends on Facebook that we made the movie for basically what the five of us have in our pockets right now, the four of us have in our pockets right this second, was the budget of that movie, basically. And we didn't have that much money. So we ended up asking the people at the movie theater company if they could give us some money. And they did. But, they've been in the movie business for a long time. And nobody gives anything away for free. And so they had first dibs on it. And they got it.
And they took it. Okay, cool.
George, I remember you being a funny guy.
Oh, once.
That was sad.
Well, I'm sorry, but
but everything about the independent film distribution business is sad. That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. I may be finding that out myself currently, but yeah, the
Dun, dun, dun.
my big fear.
What was there any issues throwing Mussolini into the river, either by just actually throwing him in the river, or like any people around, like, hey, what are you guys doing?
He was a gung-ho guy. I mean, he was up for anything.
The fish was his idea.
Yeah.
Mike Lackey played a role in the opening of the film. He plays a character named either Lloyd Kaufman or Michael Hertz. Some of these guys had worked for Troma. And the East River, right? Hudson River? Which river?
Hudson River.
It's Hudson.
And he did cut his foot. He walked around barefoot and he cut his foot. And that was the one accident on set.
But he was very low budget method, I would say. He was the type of person that would be like, I'll do it. And he like put the fish in his mouth, and like that was none of that was written. It was all just him wanting to be fully immersed in this character.
When you mentioned the blue makeup and green makeup, was there any problems then when they're coming out of the water? Because I would assume it might. It
was house paint.
Really?
We didn't have lights, so you couldn't see anything anyway.
That's right. It was headlamps. That's the only, for me, the only problem is the sound, right? The sound is just atrocious.
The sound is pretty bad. And if you remember, we didn't really have a sound mixer. We had Sal Lumetta, who's an associate producer. And other than you, he was the one guy who was really pleasant on the set from the older group. And a lot of time he held the boom, and sometimes we did, but there wasn't a sound person per se. And you can tell.
Yeah, I will say, like, I had that in my notes. I was gonna bring it up, but it is a little hard to hear the dialogue at certain points, and it's uneven a few times. But overall, it's a very fun movie.
You would think that with some sort of a licensing deal with HBO Max, they would spend just a little bit of money going back, cleaning it up a little. I'd like to see a widescreen personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an interesting thing. I don't really know the story. Maybe George can shed some light on it. But basically, the key players of this film, they seem to have just kind of abandoned it. And that's why I mention it when I can. I started the Facebook page. I proposed this thing. Somebody's got to keep the story living. It deserves a little bit of attention for its role in the 80s pantheon.
A lot of things were going on. That dumpy apartment that you had your initial meeting in was where John lived with his girlfriend, Aki Fujiyoshi. And
who was also from the cinemas or the Baronet and Coronet?
Yeah, no, cinemas.
Yeah.
And we were Candy Girls together.
I was a Candy
cigarettes.
Candy Girl. That was the actual name of the job. It was a long time ago. But they broke up while he was editing the film because she felt he was putting too much time in a movie that she didn't have any respect for.
And how Marsha Lucas of her.
Yeah. What was that?
How Marsha Lucas of her.
Yeah.
She didn't have a role in the film, though.
She didn't, but she does have one in Splatter University.
Right.
There's a couple of good lines. But, so he moved to Queens and he ended up taking over the editing completely, which he did on a moviola, which is kind of like like a motorboat engine with a little screen on it about the size of half a paperback book. And it works with a foot pedal. And that's how he cut it, with a hot splicer on the kitchen table and this motorboat, which I'm sure his neighbors just loved listening to all day. And so it was just so much work that by the time he got the cut down to something that was usable, he was probably ready to change his career and maybe go into religion or something.
Right.
But
that's where the money is.
That's where the money is. You're darn tootin'. Depends on which religion, I guess. But
I've said many times that he's became a monk. That's sort of out there in the blogosphere.
But he's got a heck of a beard. That's all I'm gonna say. None of us could get a beard like his. It's down around his waist. But anyway.
William also brings up he just about the sound. He said, I fixed the sound with my equalizer. He says you can hear the dialogue, you filter out the low. He goes into like the details. But I just think, if someone could do that on their own time, it probably would be something easy.
William, what are you doing next Saturday? Can you come to my place?
To fix it? Actually, what I liked about watching the movie today is that if you are 17, 18 years old and you want to make a movie with your friends, and you can do it, and you can see how we did it by looking at this film. Right? If you study this film, the enthusiasm of the actors, because they're just happy to be there and they're having fun doing silly things with their friends, but the actual camera placements are clunky, the structure, but it tells the story and you can follow it, and it's funny and it's entertaining and it's hopelessly amateurish, but it's wonderful because of that. And I think it's why this film shouldn't not exist. I mean, I have so many young people, they're all like 80. Oh, I love that film when I was 14. Oh, it's so good. You
like
sent me an autographed poster. But people, I actually hired a guy to work for me on a documentary I'm doing right now, who was a kid I sent a poster to, an autographed poster to. That's Dan. Hey, Dan. And he, it inspired him to go into the business, and if it could do that, I think it's a great thing.
Well, I mean, I say all the time on the show, I can overlook technical flaws in a movie if you could tell like they're having fun making it, or it's entertaining. And if something's technically great and it's just boring and it's run of the mill, like I don't care how well it's actually made, that's not entertaining to me.
But there's a lot of color behind the scenes. It was not a joyous set all the time. First of all, it was a hell of a lot of work. All three of us were in Manhattan, so we had to take the train from wherever we were downtown, connect to a train to go uptown to the George Washington Bridge. Then there would be a van waiting to take us into New Jersey. And it's not like they were giving us train fare or anything. We were completely on our own. Then you go out to New Jersey, and there were a lot of days where we weren't fed. Honestly, that's the number one rule.
You remember my solution when we were shooting the Palisades?
No.
One day, I missed the van, and they freaking left me.
I remember this. Yes.
You weren't important to the story.
Right. Not at all. So I walk across the bridge, and I'm trying to figure out how to get, to the park. And it's very confusing. So I'm standing there in Fort Lee, and I look around, and there's a McDonald's. So I go into the McDonald's, and I start talking. And I start talking to the girls at McDonald's about what we're doing in the park. And, that I'm going down there and I don't know how to get into the park. And, oh, we know how to get into the park. Oh, how do you get into the park? Oh, well, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm going to get some breakfast, but we've had a hard time getting food down there. Oh, really? And before you knew it, I had these 3 girls coming down to the set every day with bags of McDonald's. And they would hang out and watch us, not like, with that, I call it the delicious boredom, watching films get made.
Right.
And it's like, they loved it. And we got McDonald's several days.
Well, apparently you didn't try that in Brooklyn, because I remember having no food.
No food.
At Brooklyn College. I've never heard of a film since where there was no food. And Dora, who was John's assistant, kindly went out and got him a sandwich. And he was kind of on the spot. And I just remember us all sitting around in a circle on the lawn, watching him eat the sandwich. That's my number one memory of the shoot. But I also remember, there were 2 cinematographers at one point, and one of the cinematographers earlier in the shoot had an argument with John and punched him in the face, and they had to convince him to turn over some footage that he had.
Oh, wow.
So things could get very tense. And I even remember one day when Robert Sabin, no relationship to Craig Sabin, lost his temper. So, when you work long days and you're not being fed and really not being shown a whole lot of appreciation, even if you're sympathetic to the guys, because they're under a lot of pressure, they really were, tempers can flare. Do you remember that, Robert, when you lost your temper?
I don't. What I remember is, sorry,
for somebody to show up for the van at the GW Bridge. Maybe this was.
Oh, yes. I wasn't angry with the crew.
I have time to go make a phone call. So you went and you took a handful of change because you had to put a bunch of quarters in to call,
New Jersey,
let's say, a girlfriend long distance or something. And then, of course, the person shows up like right after you left. And Sal's like, okay, where's Robert? I'm like, oh, he went to go get him. So I had to go in and tell you to get right off the phone. And I hustled away from you because I could see you shaking your head. And you came and you got in the van and you slammed the door and you said, I'm really sick of this production. And the rest of us just turned dead silent. And it was the most uncomfortable trip across the George Washington Bridge I've ever had in my life.
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. That had more to do with the relationship, though, than it had to do with the production.
Well, certainly not typical of your behavior. That's why it was so funny. I mean, we were quiet, but we were kind of like,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of mistakes made in the production end of things, right? Because you either knew a little bit or you knew nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And on working on a trauma project, they always managed to get somebody to, like some company like Goya to deliver cases of black beans. So they would get somebody to warm up the black beans and throw some salt and pepper on it, and that was lunch.
Yeah.
But we didn't have anybody like that who could get us black beans or, other sorts of things. We didn't even have anyone really like getting day-old fruit or old bread or anything like that. And so we were all left to our own devices. Working a 17-hour day is pretty miserable. And we're getting grumpy. We don't have any money in our pockets. We're all poor. We all quit our jobs to make this this wonderful movie. And, it just, I never made that mistake again in my career, such as it is. Not once.
Yeah, me either. I worked on another film called Plutonium Baby, where they were putting us up in a hotel in Connecticut. And on the last day, they decided that they didn't have money to buy us dinner. And we didn't even have to discuss it. We just all said, we're leaving then. And if the tickets are only good tomorrow, we are not shooting for the day. And they caved and got us food right away.
Was it black beans? Goya black beans?
No, it was Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh.
I will say, I was able to see the prospectus that they were handing out to investors for I Was a Teenage Zombie, which at the time was budgeted at $25,000 or $35,000. So that was the figure I had in my head for Slime City too. But I do remember the line item. It was a typewritten prospectus too. I do remember the line item for food for the entire shoot was $500. Wow. Which is, even on an indie film, that's like a daily budget,
Yeah.
Dave's gaming channel just sent some super chat money, so thanks to Dave's.
Thanks, Dave.
Who's buying the sandwiches?
Someone send out for McDonald's.
Some black beans here.
Yeah.
Ty Chaman wants to know what was the original pitch for the film?
There weren't pitches back then. There weren't log lines. The pitch was probably, we worked in secondary positions on this previous film, so we know what we're doing. Give us some money and you will make 10 times your investment back. That's basically what the prospectus was. It was a different time then. There were no script readers or anything like that.
Also,
Ty is a kid who works on some of the sets that I've
the movie company is named Periclean Motion Pictures.
Right.
And the key to our fundraising, if you recall, is coffee shops, which were owned by mostly Greek people then. And so we went to every Greek coffee shop. We enjoyed the spenete kopeta, which is spinach pie.
Yeah.
And we gave them the pitch for the movie. And John was very connected in that. He's very connected, to various people in that community. And it helped us raise money on that level.
Well, there were a lot of Greeks in the crew, right?
Right.
A lot of the guys were Greek.
That's right.
Which is why that one line is funny that Lenny says, how do you separate the men from the boys in Greece? With a crowbar.
Oh, genius.
By the way, Neal,
mm-hmm.
George played Gordy, the leader of the five guys, and Robert played Chucky, the mad scientist.
I know.
I played a character that was identified as the nerd in the script, but once I took the role and did not have a pocket protector, it evolved into something different because I couldn't play the nerd.
No, you were like the stoner. I think you were at that point.
I was the production manager.
No, yeah, but you were the stoner in your scene.
I was procuring
looking
weed,
for pot. Yeah,
I think the actual stoner would be the character who's all dry, man. It's all dry. You know what happens?
We're gonna go with the glow.
Nothing.
You ever tried eucalyptus?
When we shot that particular scene, one small town cop had a real issue with us shooting on the property, and he told us that if we set foot off the owner's property, he was going to arrest us and impound the camera. And he stood there all day against his cop car with his arms folded. It's very, very obsessive.
Well, there was a reason for that too. Woody Allen shot, what was it? The one about the guy who comes out of the movie screen.
Purple Rose of Cairo.
Purple Rose of Cairo. In that town. They had an old, silent movie house that they were showing movies in. And he shot there and he paid the town a tremendous sum of money for the town. When we shot in Splatter University, they kissed our ass up and down the road onto the river and up to this creepy house that we shot in. We didn't pay a permit fee because they wanted $50,000 for us to shoot one day.
Right.
And so this guy, for a little while that day, they kept putting on the siren as well to ruin our sound takes.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, hey, the microphone can't hear us anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Gonna have to do some dubbing.
Thanks, Eric James, sent $10 super chat. This is a profitable show here.
Thank you.
And he adds, it's been years, George. Apparently a friend of yours, Eric James.
Oh, hey, man, how are you?
And Fuzzball Productions. Dominic Luongo asked, did Greg do his own stunts?
What happened to me? I got knocked over in the Frisbee scene, right? Dominic did a podcast about the show, incidentally. He reviewed it. I sent it.
Oh, very cool.
No, I didn't have a stunt double. The stunt was the
None of us did.
We all did our own stunts because we were tougher then.
Yeah, we were more spry.
I remember we did not have any production assistants on the film. And I learned that what a production manager does, because I didn't know it when I signed on, is he does anything that the production assistants would do when they're not there. And one day, when we were shooting up by the place with a tunnel, there were some people in the frame about a quarter of a mile away. And John told Jim, the writer, because sometimes he treated Jim like a production assistant. Jim, go tell them to get out of the shot. And George, in one of those wonderful mentor moments that I described early on, said, John, Jim's the writer. It's not his job to do that. And to which I then realized, oh, that's my job to do that. Thank you, George. So I ran the quarter of a mile, asked him politely to move, and ran the quarter mile back. Now, in those days, I could run a half mile. I couldn't do that today. I wouldn't even attempt it today. In fact, I was assistant director on a football commercial in the Bills Stadium, and I had to do a little running, and one of the stars ran alongside me, making fun of me, one of the star players. Well, I'll never run on set again.
Never.
Gotta want it. You gotta want it, Greg.
That's right.
William wants to know whose blue Chevy Malibu wagon was that?
John's mother, I'm guessing.
Yeah. We vote. The 2 votes, John's mother.
Yeah.
She was a school bus driver.
Was there in Fort Lee, Jersey, and his mom was on set a few times. And I think she got us pizza at least once, so I liked her. And we shot at his house once. That's and right. On that particular day, they were repeating the finale of MASH. And I said, fuck this, and went in the house and watched the finale of MASH. No one noticed.
Wow. They were that was, I guess, this was years after the finale of MASH, but they were showing it again.
No, it was just the repeat season of that last season.
Okay, all right.
For that day we were shooting.
Yeah.
Ty wants to know, how long did it take to edit the film before it get released?
I think George answered that, Ty. Pay attention.
That's right. Pay attention. There will be a quiz. No, about two and a half years, I think.
Long time.
That's keyword moviola.
Moviola, that's right.
So what did you think of the finished movie at that time when it was done? Not now currently,
the
but
premiere
the first
was
time
fun. We did it at the Waverly, and I was excited to see my name in the opening credits, which I wasn't expecting. And
Mussolini showed up in makeup.
Oh, he did. Awesome.
I was very mindful of the fact that all these big scenes that we shot, I mean, there was a big sequence in a drive-in that we spent all night shooting at that I really liked in the script. And there was a fight between the 2 zombies with machetes with the guys watching. And I thought for sure that would have made the cut, but it was so long that they just had to pull out anything they could. And then I was pleased at the end to hear that George's song had made it in. I mean, that was the first movie Robert and I had worked on. So it's exciting to go to a premiere and be part of that whole thing and see your work up there finally.
And that was at the Waverly, right?
Yeah. Waverly.
Yeah. That was really exciting. It's the first time I'd ever seen like the whole, like seeing a movie that you're in up on the big screen. It was very, very fun night.
It's exciting to see a movie, no matter what, even if you're going to watch it on television, you never saw it, just seeing it for the first time all together with people, there's an electric current that goes through it and you laugh at all the jokes, even though you did those jokes 100 times, and seeing it all together, even if it's not, because you have these memories of what you were doing that day you're on the set, right? Mm-hmm. You have a memory of that. And then you watch the movie and it kind of rewrites all your memories to tell the story of the movie. And so you forget things like the all-nighter in the drive-in or the 2 machete, the sword fight. It it, you know, we had a lot of things. Like there was a couple nights we were in that damn park all night long. And it was like, what were we shooting? We ran into the woods. We ran out of the woods in the same freaking shot. The sunset happens and then it rises in the same place where it's set. Right? It's like, what? And yet, you know, why did we stay there all night to get the sunrise when the sunrise comes up over the city, not over, you know, Jersey? Which is
that sounds like a production management question, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I was ever consulted.
Oh,
Why were we there all night? To accommodate the misogynistic twerp.
that's right. Exactly.
I saw on Facebook you had a cool poster, and Greg actually told me he didn't think he'd ever seen it before. It was like a sketch poster with, I think, had like the severed head on it.
It's what the sales team used to sell it for international sales, right, George?
Yep.
The Manly, I think it said Manly. Manly had the foreign, I guess.
Yeah. And we there's also you know, we would go out when we were doing midnight shows, we would go out at about 11 o'clock and start hitting everybody with flyers. Like, hey man, you want to see a great movie? Oh, it's a great movie. You're gonna love this movie. It's incredible. You know, and we would pull people off, and sometimes they would be happy that they saw the midnight movie, and sometimes they'd be less than happy. But, you know, we were out there every night when it was doing midnight shows to get people in. And there was something interesting. When I saw Splatter University in the movie theater, it was on 42nd Street. And it was at the tail end of when 42nd Street was known as the Deuce. And I was alone with by myself to see the movie because I didn't want to, I wanted to really study my craft and see how I did. And I'm sitting in a movie theater alone, and it's one of those big palaces that they cut up into like 4 theaters. And throughout the movie, ladies are escorting businessmen to a seat, and then the ladies' heads would disappear. And then a minute later, they'd get up, and the man would get up, and they would leave. And this happened all throughout the movie. So when we got to the theater and our movie came out, that was pretty much over. And so when I saw, I was a teenage zombie in the movie theater, like by myself when it was playing. Where was it playing? It was playing somewhere in like a dodgy area. And I kind of went half to see the whoas, as they said, do their business, but they weren't any because that was over.
So you had to watch yourself.
I had to watch myself and say, oh my God, I'm losing my hair. Oh my God, I'm overbait. I had to do that. It was just all over the place. It was horrible.
Your head going up and down.
Yep.
On yourself.
I was very flexible then.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, without your head. Yeah.
That was on your resume. Special skills. I can fillet myself.
I can. It was a thing.
Sarah wants to know, what's the story with Craig's glasses being different in that one scene? Craig's glasses, sir.
It's a continuity issue. Ask the production manager.
No, that was props and wardrobe. That was Dora, the assistant who got John the sandwich to eat in front of all of us. That's not me.
Yeah,
John's cousin.
It's something that got past all of us, and now that we have the the dubious gift of being able to rewatch it constantly, it's the thing everyone talks about when they talk about that movie. The glasses. What's up with the glasses?
Well, Chuck was no bum. He was a debonair nerd.
Yeah. He kind of honestly, Chuck kind of
pair of glasses.
He had many glasses. He was a
I
man
have
of many
two pairs
glasses.
of glasses in front of me right now.
Chuck kind of becomes the leader of the group after Mussolini dies. I think after they kill Mussolini, he kind of becomes the leader.
Well, yeah, becomes the dad.
He's the investigator.
He's the mastermind of the group.
He's the one figuring out what's going on. But ultimately, our fate was in the hands of Dan. Mike the zombie.
Yeah, that last scene where we're leaning up against a car, and how long will they have? And you give us.
I love that scene, by the way.
It's a beautiful scene.
Got to me in the script, and it gets to me in the movie, and it just has I don't want to say pathos, but a genuine emotion that I don't pick up too many times in the film.
It definitely does. But didn't she come alive? Didn't we film her come alive and kiss him?
No,
I don't think so.
No, we never filmed that
no.
because he was such a bad kisser in the scene in the lake.
I do remember the lake.
Maybe that's why.
Because that lake was freezing
You're
cold,
so lippy.
and she had to dip down, and we didn't think she was going to do it, and she was game.
She was game.
Was any of the stuff any of the stuff you did film and you said like wasn't used, like the machete fight and stuff, is any of that saved or is that just gone?
I had the Catholic Church has it, doesn't it, George?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, the Greek Orthodox Church. I don't know.
It's in his beard.
Actually, I was a teenage zombie video. I actually had a print of the film that I use in the video, and I transferred it to video. I did a high quality transfer, such as it is, and you know, so I said, "Well, where's the rest of the film?" And he was like, "I threw it out." I'm like, "Everything?" And he said, "Yeah. You know, I have no place to store it. So it's gone forevermore. It's only in our memories."
It's the second time tonight you brought me down.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so, but
you are the sad clown, George.
So two of the leads we should mention, and that would be Dan.
Yeah.
Who was now I've forgotten his name. Joe Rubin, Mike Rubin. Yeah, Joe Rubin's brother, Mike Rubin. He's the younger brother of the guy who directed Dreamscape and Sleeping with the Enemy and a bunch of really top-notch thrillers. And he and the screenwriter of Dreamscape visited the set, which was kind of a thrill because me and Peter Clark loved Dreamscape. That was a great movie.
Great movie.
Yeah, I used to rent it a lot on VHS back when I was a kid. Yeah.
And I think he realized right during the film that acting wasn't really for him. But I had heard he was doing assistant directing for a while, and I don't see the credits online. So I guess he found something else. But he was an assistant director for a while. And the guy that I have lost track of, who I would really like to know about, is Pete Bush.
Yep.
Rosencrantz, who was the sweetest guy with a super nervous condition. And he worked with me at the video store where me and a bunch of my friends worked in Times Square. And I used to torment this poor guy and terrify him because I would strike the Karate Kid pose and he would just go like not knowing what was going to happen next. And I really liked him, and I'd like to know what happened with him.
Me too.
No other credits.
I liked him very much. He was very talented, I thought.
Yeah.
And he had a great sense of humor about him. You know, like he understood that he was a natural character, and that's where he was going to do his best acting, was in that character. He wasn't going to play Hercules.
He was a soothing presence, and him and Big Al from The Rock were a good pair together.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to talk about him playing Peter Parker.
Yes.
Yeah,
Steve Ditko's Peter Parker.
That's right.
Yeah.
If he can get his fingers to do all that. Steve Ditko shit, you know.
CG is. Dave wants to know, was there any issues with the MPAA of anything in the film?
It was never submitted to the MPAA, just like a lot of indie films back then, because it costs thousands of dollars to get that rating. And unless a video company insists on it, you don't spend that money. And usually if the company insists on it, they pay for it themselves and they deduct the expense from your royalties.
Yeah, but that was what's his name? Jack Boom Boom Valenti was the head of the MPAA then. And he was pretty damn nasty about low budget films, particularly horror movies. There was something about it he really hated. And if you tried to get it past him, you know, if your budget was like, you know, below $500,000, it was a red flag to those people. And they would watch the movie and they would want you to make changes. And it was in a way, I think he felt that he wasn't, he was helping support a healthy film industry for people who are already making a living in the film industry.
Yeah, this was part of the Reagan era, and Reagan got rid of a lot of the tax write-off aspects of film, and it just felt like it was a shakedown, because then you would make cuts and you would have to pay thousands of dollars to resubmit it again.
Yeah.
It wasn't you pay once and get a few passes. You had to keep paying them money
each time.
It's similar to the comics code. There just came a point where different creators said, why bother? What's the point?
Yeah. What a pain in the butt.
Ty wants to know, did you ever put any nods or references to I Was a Teenage Zombie in any future films that you made?
Robert, did you evoke Chucky in any of the films we did together?
I didn't evoke Chucky, although I did do for many years a podcast called Zombie Radio Show.
Right.
And Zombie Radio Show was very much in line with the dark comedy of I Was a Teenage Zombie. And I feel like at that time, everyone on the set was a huge fan of Sam Raimi and George Romero. And so there was just a lot of talk about, brain-eating zombies versus flesh-eating zombies, and it's
slow
and
fast.
Yeah, exactly. Slow v fast. And so I had a lot of fun doing that for some years. And I think that's as close as I came to sort of channeling the spirit of I Was a Teenage Zombie. It had no music, though, apart from unlistenable jazz music, which was part of the joke. Yeah.
George?
Well, you brought up the Raimis, Sam Raimi. He and his brother were actually real fans of the film because they felt like we did it for no money. Like, if they gave us a little bit more money, what would they do? But, of course, they couldn't find John because he had disappeared by that point. But they found me. And so they hired me to write a script I pitched to them, and it was called Schmorgus Morgue. And it was about a guy who works the morgue, who goes into business feeding ghouls like a buffet.
I'm all about this. Yeah.
And so we wrote the script, and I guess they went into television and decided not to come up with the money, but they did. I had a pretty great conversation with them about making the movie.
That story makes this whole episode worthwhile. I never knew that.
Yeah, neither did I. That's awesome. That's awesome. They were accessible back in the day. I friends of mine were, pitching them a superhero idea, and this is before or just after the first Spider-Man. But they were like, yeah, they were just open. They were open to, creators trying to do stuff.
Yeah, and they were real fans too. Like, I don't know if we're all comic book guys too, but you would see them at the comic book convention. Mm-hmm. You'd say, hey, that guy looks like the guy in like Darkman. And it would be Ivan, like, oh, yeah, I am. My brother makes like we did that together. And so you could meet them. There were a bunch of people you'd meet from time to time that were around the scene, were far more successful than I was.
One of the reasons that I never even considered making any sort of reference to it in any of the films I worked on afterwards was there came a moment of the film that sort of sank my heart. And it was when, during a conversation of what other films John might want to do, he wanted to do a Custer and Sitting Bull movie very much. He said, I fucking hate horror. And I was just like, oh, come on, man. You did a horror film. You're making a horror film. We're all here on your horror comedy, busting our asses with no food. And you're going to sit there and say you hate the genre that we're working in. And it just kind of left a bad feeling in me about the whole thing from that day forward.
Yeah, I know. Even doing the show, when if I have someone on and they talk about like not liking horror movies, I always like at least lie when you're in the show and just Yeah.
Well, he was being honest. I'll give him credit. I mean, and he obviously liked comedy and considered the film a comedy with horror aspects. But it was just, I was so excited to be working on a horror film, and I would do anything to be there. Even not eating. If you look at how skinny I am in the film, that's why. I would go home and I all I had in the house was beef bouillon cubes, and I would make myself hot liquid to eat at the end of a long day.
Good times.
I weighed 119 pounds.
Woo!
I was half the man I am today.
William McConnell wants to know, what was the relationship with the old guy who played Lenny? Like, how do you get involved in the movie? Did he actually own that place, or?
No, he didn't own it. He was an actor.
I think he came in. We did 2 major castings at a independent theater company. We rented out like their rehearsal room, and literally we got like 200 people showed up. It was like crazy. And, you know, we had all these experiences with people who auditioned and presented something. And then when we got them to the set, they wouldn't do it. Linnea was going to be our one like nude shot in the entire film. And then when it came time to do it, she said no. You know, so I think that scene, which is gruesome, I think only got more gruesome, you know, the rape scene, because she wouldn't do the boob shot that she promised us. And she had small boobs, they were perfectly fine, exactly where they're meant to be. And yet, at that moment, she said no. And then she got really angry, but she went with the scene as it was, even though it took for frickin' ever. If you remember, we shut that scene. I got bored, and I walked away. It just
to get it fit, like technically done with the legs, and
it was two people.
Right.
You know, 2 other people, and just lifted the legs.
So if you know your footwear, you'll notice that it's the wrong legs. He twists them up, but he does this. He switches them around, so they're. I don't know. It's crazy.
It would be worth seeing if the film is mentioned on any foot fetish sites, except then you get bombarded with foot fetish things.
Yeah,
we are. Don't mention it.
Maybe George, Tarantino's a big fan. Yeah,
I went to an audition session, and it was actually at the Baronet and Coronet.
That was a later one.
And that's where Robert auditioned, right? I think you came to the Baronet and Coronet to audition. And I had so much fun watching the different actors do the basement scene where he says, "I'm a teenage zombie, damn it." And so many of the actors were frankly more effective than the Dan we went with, but he was fine. But there was such a dramatic drive to the auditions, whereas they played it more for the laughs in the film.
Right. Dan was a good looking fella.
Yeah.
And compared to some of the fellows who auditioned for that part, I mean, we don't have. He's the closest thing to a movie star that we,
right?
And, you know, in his look, he's fit, you know, but not.
He was also straight, unlike a lot of the guys who auditioned.
Correct.
But his instincts were good too. Like how he delivered that line. "Look at me, I'm a teenage zombie. Look at me" was the climax of the line, and then "I was a teenage zombie" is like in defeat, and it's you know, it's a much better choice than "Look at me, I'm a teenage zombie."
That's right.
You are correct. One thing I'll say about all 5 of you guys, Diner had already come out, right?
Yes.
I think we were all aware of the concept of the 5 guys, but I don't know how much discussion you guys all had on your own, but there was definitely an understanding of what the chemistry had between you all and made it work. That's a compliment.
Excellent.
Yeah, I brought that up. I thought it seems like you guys are all actually friends when you guys are talking and stuff.
I think we're thinking about it. What I enjoyed the most about the acting part, right, was the fact that we would talk about bits of business. And every scene, though, we had this conversation about what we were going to do in the scene. How were we going to make it funnier? Like the scene where we run behind the curtain and then we all poke our heads up. Of course, we didn't do it in a way that you know, because I'm so tall, that's why I'm on top. And instead, I'm like, we're all the same height, you know, like Peter is actually the tallest one of the 3 of us, I think. And he should have been on top, but that's not how we played it. You know, so I'm tiptoes, like barely up there. You know, we were constantly trying to come up with something funny to do because we knew that, you know, if we didn't pull it off, it wasn't going to happen. Right. It was not in like John's interest to make us funny. It was in our interest to make us funny, and we did that, I think.
I
Just
do
honest-
remember shooting on the day we shot at the lake. While they were shooting Dan supposedly getting blown underwater by Cindy Faithful, Peter, Big Al, Gwen, and I don't remember if Linnea was there or not. I don't think she was. I think Gwen was there. They worked out this whole bit
The fall.
with the towel and this and that. And it was very funny. But they weren't asked to do it. And at that particular time, John was irritated with them always presenting stuff to him. And he just shot them down right away. And I'm not saying that was the wrong thing to do. If he knew what the scene was supposed to be, he knew what the scene was supposed to be. But it was pretty crushing for them to have spent like 40 minutes working on this and just have it dismissed without them even being able to audition it for him.
Right. I wish I had known. I was more cognizant, because for whatever reason, I could push anything through. You know, if I didn't like a scene that we were going to shoot the next day, I got to the set with, 3 pages, 4 pages of dialogue that we were going to shoot. Because that was, oh, yes, we are. We're going to, because that was my relationship with him. There was no way he was going to tell me no, because what I had written was better. And it didn't matter if it was better. It was just, I felt it was better because I did it.
I was a big fan of you scratching your head with the machete. It's kind of a nod to play a 9 with the guy with the gun, scratch his head with the gun. Yeah.
And, I think that's, kind of how we worked it. And I wish I had seen that scene because the fall, there is a scene, Linnea is in that scene with them, and she makes them go swimming. And they're going to go and get into their bathing suits, which of course, Big Al was not getting in a bathing suit, but she's pulling them, and Gwen does this fall, which is actually really funny. It's a solid fall. It's not a banana peel like Mussolini has to do, but it was, it was a decent fall. Her feet pop up into the frame when she hits I think we used all the towels and the blankets we put down. I think we stacked them all on the floor for her to land on, so she didn't hurt herself. Because
sounds like great padding.
Maybe
that was the day a monsoon hit us, and we had to haul all that equipment through the woods and up a hill to the car, and it was some people were not happy about that.
Definitely not. In its older sibling, right, Splatter University, just as we were finishing the film, somebody said, "Hey, can I have that piece of gaffer tape, that roll of gaffer tape?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And he threw it. And it hit Francine Forbes, the actress, right on the nose. And you could hear the crack. And the blood and the eyes. And, oh, man, we couldn't shoot the end of the film. We had to wait like 3 weeks. So it was very exciting. So, the fall was like a big deal. We could fall, but the girl, John, was very concerned about. So I just remember like finding anything soft, stacking it so she could do this little fall that she so wanted to do. But I wish I had seen the towel bit. Now I feel guilty.
George, do you remember how many days we shot? It was a full month.
It was a full month. I think altogether we shot a full month. We shot like 32 days in a row. And then we did 2 weekends after that, where we came back and shot something else.
30 days without a day off?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I missed one day because I literally had no money for a train token. And I lied and said I was sick for the day because I was too embarrassed to say I had no money. But that's how broke I was doing that film.
Oh. Yeah, no, I was going to say, good job.
Greg, you quit your job, you did no money stuff, but how important was this movie to your future career as a film director?
Extremely. I went to New York to go to film school. After 1 year of film school, I said, I don't see this getting me where I want to be. And I worked for a year as a movie theater manager. And during that year, The Deadly Spawn, Evil Dead, these 16 millimeter films came out, and Basket Case was already playing when I got there. And my plan was, okay, I'm going to find a way to get into movies. And I spent a year managing this theater, making what was considered good money at the time, like $220 a week. And then I met John, and that's why as soon as that opportunity presented it, I said, I'm there. I'm quitting my job, whatever. I had written Slime City, and me and Peter Clark needed to know the nuts and bolts of how to pull one of these things together. And I definitely needed that experience. And I learned so much from what they did right, but also from what they did wrong. I promised myself I wouldn't make the same mistakes. And of course, when Slime City did happen, we made our own mistakes. We made new mistakes. But
you have to.
It was a fantastic learning experience. And I've said many times, I learned as much on that set in that 1 month as I learned in a whole year of film school. And you learn how to work with people and how to deal with people and how to identify which people are there to help you and which ones are to step on you and which ones just to avoid because they've got too much on their plate. That's really important.
That actually comes up several times in interviews I do with independent filmmakers who say, for Trauma, for example, they might not, they know going in, they're not going to make any money. But I know like Liam Regan, who's made a lot of movies since then, he said he used it as his film school, just being on set and learning how to make a movie.
But the key, I think, is that you have to have people around you who have done it before. Mm-hmm. And we had that on Teenage Zombie. John had worked as the assistant director on Splatter U, which was directed by Richard Haynes. And George had been on that set. And Jim was too, right? George?
Yep.
These guys, if they had time to talk, they would talk. But usually they were just too busy. There was so much to do. Yeah. That's why I said you were the mentor because you had the time to talk. And if you didn't have time, you'd make time to talk.
Yep. Wait, I'm talking now. You don't need me right yet. I'm telling this kid what to do. Because I had a production company job. I had done a bunch of commercials and I had done a shit ton of industrial films. And so a lot of like our B camera was my camera. That when I got shit canned from when NBC went from shooting with a film camera, all the news, right? They put in a film chain. They'd soup it right there at Rockefeller Center. You'd bring up your rolls of film. You'd give it to them. They'd soup it right there, and then they put it in the film chain wet, and they would put it on the video, and then they start cutting. Sometimes they would even soup it, give it to the editor. The editor would cut out the holes, and then they roll it right into the show from the fill chain. So I had a bunch of equipment that I bought. They were going to put in the garbage, so they decided to sell it to me. And what they sold me, like they sold me the camera for like $35. Each lens was $5. This is an Ariflex 60 millimeter camera, and but the blimp they wanted $250 for so you didn't hear it sound like a motorboat. It was crazy. But that's where we got some of our equipment from. We just did these, I was trying to work on a film and I kept saying like, oh, don't we have any like lavalier microphones? Can't we get some of those? I thought one of these guys, worked in the film department at Brooklyn College. And, he did. He was also a guy at the token booth. So he didn't want to borrow that. He didn't want to borrow anything from them that we might lose or break. But he did get us the shotgun boom mic, which you can see the shadow many times on Craig's face, more often than anybody else.
Because you were always in the middle, I think.
Yeah, and I've got one of those faces that just attracts shadows.
I have. Exactly.
Yeah. But I was just gonna ask, I know we did a Slime City show before, but Craig, working on this with Greg, were you all on board then when Greg wanted to make Slime City?
Hell yeah. No, Greg and I were buddies, and I was, with. It was fun to see the movie made, it was, and of course Greg got me the job, so there was that gratitude, but it was just very exciting, because Greg has always been like just a person that knows where he's going and is constantly, getting there. So it was very good to be sort of in the slipstream of that ambition. And also, he's a fucking great writer. And I mean, so it was just wonderful to be able to be a part of that for as long as I was able to do it.
Before he ran off to LA.
Yeah, before I scurried off.
It was before cell phones, so that's why I never got the call from Greg ever until Facebook. Because if I had had a cell phone, he would be able to call me or text me. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, of course, definitely, I would work on that."
No, it definitely helps to live with the guy. Like he would be at the window screaming, "George!" and I'd be like, "I'll do it."
Yeah, I'm
George,
here.
I think I did call you for one, but you were busy spending 6 months as a juror on the Bernard Goetz trial.
Oh no, close. It was the Preppy murder trial.
Oh, the Robert Chambers.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
It was absolutely like the worst experience of my freaking life.
Sequestered, right?
Sequestered forever in the
For
worst
6 months.
hotels. Yeah, the worst hotels in New York City. I got a fungus that I only just got rid of.
Well, I'm glad that's cleared up for you.
But you
get the best funguses.
Oh,
you get the best fungi in sequestration.
Have the best funguses.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I go to the Normandy. The best fungi.
The best fungi. The airport travel lodge. Beautiful fungi.
I saw that on Lonely Planet.
Yeah. Oh, right. It was so good. That episode was fantastic. I had to go and stay a night, but for some reason it didn't take. Actually,
I have a hostile nail.
Oh yeah, that happens sometimes. You do. If you want to cultivate it, put some sugar water on it. It'll spread nice. Actually, Greg, I've had a kind of odd career for myself, and recently
I've had a career.
And the guy I've been bragging the most about is Greg, because you are a driven guy who makes a narrative film every other year, practically, since we met.
I try to do one every 2 years.
There you go. And the narrative film has eluded my entire career. I've had projects like actual Hollywood projects. I had a bungalow at the Warner lot. The Warner lot. And, I thought I was going to make a movie, and then it went away. And, I look at it and I say, gee whiz, who cares? I directed 390 music videos. Who gives a, can I curse? I can say whatever.
Who gives a Facebook?
Who gives a fuck? I don't, in the end, that's why I started doing documentaries, is I had a kid. And I started thinking about, is he going to want to watch this? Is he going to care that I spent so much time doing music videos so I could get free records? Is that really something I should be doing? And so I started, trying to make documentaries, which what I've been doing for the last 20 some odd years. But I look at Greg's career and, he gets them made, he gets them financed. Whenever I see the thing that he needs a little bit of money, I give him a little bit of money, And so, because I want him to do well, because he's following the dream that we all had at the beginning, this dream to make these wonderful things. Movies are wonderful, wonderful things. And they're the most difficult art to do because you can't do it alone. And I once described it as it's kind of like you grab a dragon by the tail and then you beat it until it's a guinea pig. And that's kind of what you do, is it's such an overwhelming thing. In the end, you have to get control of it. And the fact that Greg gets to do it, not on huge budgets, not with a lot of support, it's all blood, sweat, and tears. And they're always entertaining. And that's a great thing. So let him entertain us.
Thank you.
And he's eating more.
He is eating more. Well, there's more of him. Definitely.
Well, I have a new film out now, and what that means is I don't know how I'm paying next month's mortgage. So that's pretty much how my life has gone working on these indie films.
Well, but I'm proud that you're making them.
Thank you, George.
Yes.
I will tell you, I encourage young filmmakers to work on a film for free, a feature for free, if it's something that they're going to learn on. Don't work for free necessarily on a film with people who don't know what they're doing. I mean, sometimes you have to because they're your friends, but it's worth the learning experience. When I did my last one, Guns of Eden, now out, I interviewed a college kid, and I said, look, it's a crowdfunded film. I'm not paying for PAs. I'm looking for a few interns, and I promise you that we're actually going to have a curriculum to make sure you come out of this fully trained as a PA. And this kid, Alex, God bless him, he said to me, I will quit my job to work on this film. And that was like, oh my God, I found one. And he found circle on the film. So you look for that kind of enthusiasm and hope people get something out of it when they work on these.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell the young kids, when the young kids call me or come up to me and they say, how can I have a career like yours? I said, kid, you only got one thing. You certainly don't know how to coil an extension cord. But what I say is you have sweat equity. You have the privilege of living at home or living in some circumstances where you have some assistance paying your bills, and you can work for free. And that's the only way you're ever going to learn, is when you come to the set just to see what everybody else is doing and to find your place. I cannot tell you how many people I've been at the start of their career where they had to go on, and they've done better in some respects than me, but they've gone on from just having that exposure of working for free on some movie. I mean, the three of us worked for free on this movie. I worked for free on, a bunch of movies. I was there when the decision to use the sound man as the Toxic Avenger in the beginning, and before he becomes the Toxic Avenger, because he had no chin. We were sitting there going like, oh, this guy didn't show up. The nerdy guy did not show up. And then we all did this. The sound guy, will you do it?
Mark Torgo?
Another exclusive on the show, Neal.
Oh, very nice. I'm friends with Mark Torgo. He's in my movie, the Once and Future Smash, now playing festivals. Let's see here. Let's ask a couple more here. Eric James, Greg was right about George's early comedic origin. Ask him if he recalls the Michael Sarzinski, I think, radio show. I was there with him and others from high school.
In high school, I got called to be I got asked to be on a radio show representing the school. And I just had way too much fun. And, I was far more goofy than I am today. You see, Greg's walking out of the room now.
No. I'm trying to improve the lighting here.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm looking at you guys, and you look good. And there's no reason why you guys should look good and I should not.
That's right. This looks really cool.
There is one reason. I won't go into it, but there is one reason.
That's right. We both look much better than you. No, but so that's what it is. So I ended up on a radio show, and then he had me back like 6 or 7 times. I had like a regular segment in high school on regular radio. So just from having too much fun on the radio, I think I had to let me go because I said something bad.
Okay.
I said what I said earlier on actual WABC radio. Oh, we lost.
It didn't work out for you like it did for Howard Stern.
No, it didn't work out for me. But anyway, that's funny stuff. So what's going on with Craig? Is he losing his?
He says he'll be right back.
He's not.
All right. Yeah. What? So you got another question?
Sue enjoyed this. Had to curb drinking all the water. I want during this not to be spitting it out with your humor. That's very nice of her to say. And Mimi wants to know, besides the obvious, what are your guys' favorite zombie movie?
For me, it's Dawn of the Dead, but I have to say Shaun of the Dead is a close second. And on some years I say, Shaun of the Dead's my favorite.
I'm with you. I like Shaun of the Dead too, but Dawn of the Dead's definitely always been my favorite.
Yeah,
the original
3D experience was amazing. Oh, that was so good.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying these recent 3D. I feel that and Jaws was really fun.
Both of them were good, but Dawn of the Dead really blew me away, except for whenever a head exploded, because the shots needed to be extended for 3D. It was like startling that everything would start flying in your face and then it would cut away.
Yeah.
So they needed a little re-edit there, I think, for that to have worked.
They could have just slowed it down a little bit, maybe. But I didn't get to see those, but yeah, I love Night of the Living Dead. I like the, for me, I'm like a real old movie person in a way, I like, but I do think Shaun of the Dead is a movie I have seen multiple times because I'm big on multiple times, which unlike Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, I've not seen those movies more than once or twice since they came out. I know. But I've seen Shaun of the Dead like 3 times since it's come out. So it's very entertaining. Those guys are very entertaining.
I had a film theory professor at SVA. Did you have Joan Braderman at all?
Yeah, sure.
She was my film theory teacher, and man, was she amazing. She was this radical leftist feminist. And she used to tell us in class, you never begin to see a film until the second time. And when you're living in New York City, you should go see every movie, which means if you want to see every movie, you got to see it twice. Well, I looked her up a few years ago. I was just curious, she's teaching up in New England now. And I said, do you still recommend that people see everything that's out in the theaters? And she was like, God, no. Like she's just acknowledging what's happened to the movie business. What are her favorite zombie movies?
Yeah.
You have a favorite?
Craig, Mimi wants to know everyone's favorite zombie movies. Greg was Dawn of the Dead and Shaun of the Dead. And George was Night of the Living Dead. And also he likes Shaun of the Dead.
Well, I like, I think I prefer Night of the Living Dead to Dawn of the Dead, although, Dawn of the Dead is a great one. But Shaun of the Dead is awesome. There's just nothing like that sort of comedic reattacking of that particular genre. So those two are my favorites. And of course, I Was a Teenage Zombie, right up there.
Way up there.
Yeah.
The top.
Yeah. Well, I think it was more like, what is your second favorite after?
Yeah, exactly. I'll take that proviso.
Other than movies you appeared in, your favorite zombie movies.
So, George, you might mention making documentaries. Do you have anything in the works currently?
I have 2. I just finished one called Keeping Up with the Joneses, about 3 brothers who were jazz musicians: Hank Jones, Thad Jones, and Elvin Jones. Each one is a famous sideman who is very important to the development of jazz. Hank Jones was he actually is the person who plays the piano for Marilyn Monroe when she sings "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." But he was Ella Fitzgerald's piano player. He was the head of the CBS orchestra. Elvin Jones is a world famous drummer, and he's pretty much, outside of rock drummers, he is considered like the high watermark of drum playing. And Thad Jones was very important in the evolution of the Count Basie orchestra. And that's that. And then I have one on Willie Tyler and Lester called Hello Dummy, which is in post-production right now. We have a nice 48-minute cut of half of it. And we're working on that other half, getting the scenes done. And it's just filled with, like I have Margaret Cho, Pee Wee Herman, David Arquette. I mean, it's just filled with Shecky Green is in it. Talk about shit. He tells a great story in the movie. We have Gilbert Gottfried's in it. Chris Rock.
Right.
But Shecky
Is
tells
Gilbert Gottfried talking in it?
Oh yeah. He tells a great story too. He tells a story. He goes, and let me tell you, Willie and I did a TV show in the 1970s. So I say, hey, Willie, where's your partner? And he gestures. And there's a burlap sack in the corner. And every time Willie went past it, he'd throw some hot coffee on him. I'm like, he's torturing this poor man, this poor puppet. He goes, and then I remembered that torturing a puppet was a euphemism back in World War II for masturbation. It'd be two guys in a foxhole. Excuse me, old chap. I have to turn around and torture the puppet. And yet we won World War II. And that's his story.
No thanks to puppets.
The puppet. So I'm torturing the puppet. So Shaky tells the story. He goes, hey, did I ever tell you? And we never met him before. It was the one day, the shoot, we put it together. He says, did I ever tell you the time Frank Sinatra saved my life? And we're like, no. And he said, I used to work at this casino and I could walk home from there. So one night I'm walking home and these 5 guys jump out of a car and they start beating me and they're beating me and they're beating me and the lights are getting dim. And I know that this is it. I'm going to be dead soon. And then I hear Frank say, okay, boys, he's had enough. And that was the truth.
And how about yourself, Craig? Do you have anything in the works?
I'm a spec screenwriter, so I've got about 3 projects that are percolating, and we'll see if anything comes of them. I'm, one of them looks to be moving forward. We'll see. I can't. That's the frustrating thing though, because once there's some interest, you suddenly can't talk about it until it's either they're ready to take out ads in Variety or whatever. So I spend a lot of my time not talking about what I'm doing.
That's right. When you get the email from Deadline Hollywood and it says what happened, it happens.
Yeah, exactly. When somebody calls and says, what do you know about this project? Then I can talk about that project.
Robert is WGA, by the way, he's in the Writers Guild.
Oh, very cool. And Greg, how about yourself?
Guns of Eden.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What do you have in the works, or what people
buy it now? Guns of Eden.
Yeah.
Guns of Eden is out right now. It's only $3.99 to rent on Amazon. There's another film out that I wrote the screenplay for called Showdown in Yesteryear, which is a fantasy Western about a guy from our time who goes back in time. And it's the first thing I've written that's got like mainstream romance and comedy in it. So that was really fun to do. And honestly, the guys did a great job producing and directing it without me. It's a really good film. Vernon Wells, who was the Mohawk guy in the Road Warriors in it, and Deborah Lamb. And I believe I'm about to start co-producing a comedy that's very Buffalo centric that we could be shooting in 6 weeks. And I'm still trying to get my werewolf project off the ground. That's the thing I want to do myself, but I have to work on other people's films to pay bills. So I'm glad to be working on a film that may be about the bills.
Vernon Wells yelled at me once because I thought his character in Road Warrior, the guy was gay with the twink kind of character, and he's like, no, that's my son in the movie, and I was like, oh well, I don't think anyone else knows this either.
Then you say your son would make a great twink.
I remember that makeout scene pretty well.
All right. Tell yourself what you need.
Maybe they're not mutually exclusive and it's a really different movie. I don't know. But I like Vernon Wells. He's a very cool guy. He's been on the show.
He's great in this film. I mean, I don't know him personally, but he's really good.
Yeah, and he's a really big animal lover. He has I think he for people who they adopt, they get wolves thinking they make good pets, and then they don't, and they try to get rid of them, and he adopts them and has like a big area that he keeps them, which I think is cool.
I want to double back real quick to Guns of Eden though, because Greg has wanted to do like a Rambo movie for a while since Rambo, and he did like a female centric Rambo movie, and it's awesome. So check it out if
I haven't seen it yet.
anyone that's interested in the feminist battle and B, the sort of a red state satire kind of a thing. It's a great movie. So be sure to check it out if you like the genre. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I want to see the finished cut because I saw a previous cut to have Greg on and the cast, and it didn't have the sound and everything yet. So I want to see the actual finish.
When
Yeah.
we did the first script reading with a cast on Zoom, I had Robert come on and read the narration.
Because I'm a good reader.
That's correct. I
Always
held on
been.
to that lesson.
Variety, 4 stars. Reading.
What a read.
And now the award for best reading for Craig Sabin. He reads like no one else.
Very good. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Yeah. I know it's a horror show, but I watch all kinds of movies. I'm sure people watching this do as well.
Right. Be well-rounded.
Exactly.
Getting back to Vernon Wells just for a second, and this is more for Robert's benefit. He plays the big boss of the town, and I named him Orson Kane. If you remember, we went and saw a Citizen Kane in the theater, like Cinema Village or 8th Street Playhouse, and I slept through most of it.
Yes, yes. Yeah. No, I
saw it
remember.
eventually.
Yeah, yeah. No, you can see that film by osmosis, just a clip here, a clip there, somebody talking about this innovation or whatever. But I have to say, except for one showing of Jabberwocky when I was 17, I have never fallen asleep in a movie.
I've fallen asleep in so many.
Yeah.
Usually because during a shoot, I don't go to movies, and then I need to catch up after the shoot.
Yeah.
And I just get in those seats and I'm out. Air conditioning, comfortable seat, I'm dead. Dead.
Yeah.
I've woken up in the theater in the morning.
Ooh.
When we used to work
wow.
in the movie theater, I would go, like in the summertime when it was hot. And if I hadn't seen the movie, I'd make sure I was there. And sometimes I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up, when the projectionist came in and started running the film backwards, rewinding the film and, yelling at his wife on the telephone or something. I would, where am I? I'm in the theater. Okay, great. But
it's you got to stop going to see movies dressed up as popcorn.
That's right. I dress up like
maybe they notice you.
Yeah. It's a piece of carpeting with popcorn on me and juju bees all stuck in there. And I lay down on the floor. I fall asleep. One thing, when Joan Braverman said that you should watch every movie twice, that was a time when you could actually see movies twice. When I was a kid growing up, my parents were about the worst people to ever become parents. They're actually doing a commemorative medal for them that they will be selling. And so I spent almost 3 days at a double feature in New York City. And you had all these great revival houses. You had the St. Mark's Theater, which was 2 movies for $1. Mm-hmm. You had the Thalia, the Regency. There were 2 in the Times Square region, and you could just go and see 2 movies. Sometimes they were connected in some way, sometimes they weren't, but it didn't really matter because you got to watch these 2 movies that you probably normally wouldn't have seen, uncut, which was very, sometimes you'd see a movie. I'll tell you a story about a movie I saw. I had only seen it on television as a kid growing up, and some friends said, "Hey, you want to take mushrooms?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to take mushrooms." And so we went to the 8th Street Playhouse, and we waited, and we went into the theater, and the movie started just like I always remembered it. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, this is amazing! Everything's in color. It was The Wizard of Oz, and I'd never seen it in color. I'd only seen it on black and white television. So it was a big shot. Very eye-opening.
I gotta say, there is something to the double feature experience that has, I think, been lost, and I think is due for revival, because just having a curated double feature that you have to go to a theater, you watch, it's a good value, all of that stuff. There's just something you just chew it up. It's awesome. It's great stuff.
I used to do them until recently. I would call them secret cinemas, and it would be people would come and they'd do a donation so I could pay for the rental of the theater. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't promote the movies because I didn't have the rights to them. But as long as they're renting it as a party, I can show whatever I want. And then I would surprise them. And sometimes the movies are too long and I can just do one, but I've done a bunch of double features.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. That is awesome. There's just something about it. It's just, it's its own thing.
Do you remember our double feature that we went to? I'm not talking about at home when we watched Stallone double feature. I'm talking about the double feature we went to.
Who's we?
Me and Robert.
Where'd you go?
We went to a few.
This was a key one because it was the first time I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Have Eyes at the age.
I do remember that, and I remember being terrified of The Hills Have Eyes. I was like, I think it was a very late show, and they were showing like midnight movie previews, and one of them was Savage Man, Savage Beast, and with lions eating people, and I like actually got sick, and then we watched this double feature. Yes, I totally remember that.
I was grateful that I had never managed to see those two films and got to see them for the first time in a theater.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's the bald guy, right? In The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah, Michael Berry.
I did a commercial with him, and he played it for laughs, but he was such a sweet guy.
Yeah,
and I kept like, my brain was like, I couldn't figure it out. Like it was just like acting, but not really. It was just fantastic. I came out suicidal from a double feature. It was of Mice and Men and Midnight Cowboy, which obviously has a connection. But at the end of Midnight Cowboy, I was at the Carnegie Hall Theater in the basement of the Carnegie Hall.
I remember.
And, I stepped out on the street, and it had been snowing, like 4 hours before. So there's nothing like New York City after a snowfall, which is basically slush of the gray and black variety. And it was very quiet. And so I didn't know what to do. So I decided I was going to walk through Central Park to get my brain around it. It was like, probably, I never had the sense of actual danger anywhere in New York City. Even with people shooting guns, I was like, oh, it's not going to hit me. And so I walked through Central Park, which was all snow, and I'm trudging through this snow and thinking about it. And I'm like going, I could fall now and die, and it would be fine. Because
I saw Midnight Cowboy.
And I felt so miserable. And then I hear this voice, hey, kid, you're walking on the ice. And I was standing in the middle of the lake, in the southern lake in the park. And I could have actually broken through the ice and died. And this hot dog vendor caught me.
And that guy that warned you, Shecky Green.
Exactly. It was Shecky.
Hey, hey.
It was Maury Amsterdam.
Frank Sinatra.
In all honesty, if you want to know, it was Maury Amsterdam. The royalties just weren't great.
Neal, I had a great laugh in your email when you said the podcast show usually lasts about an hour.
Right.
I knew we would be able to mine much more material than for an hour.
How long were you doing this? A long time.
Almost 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually tell people an hour and whatever it goes. I'm good with however long it goes, but yeah.
What movie were we talking about? Did we come on the show to discuss?
Well, you got any more questions?
Cowboy. Yeah. Well, this has been a great time to talk with all of you. It's been very fun.
Thank you. This is a great Christmas present, and your background equally great. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So festive. Yeah. I'm going to go out and get some garlands and some sprinkly lights, and I'm down.
Excellent.
I was afraid that I didn't know when I got the ones that turn on and off. I didn't know that they did that, so I didn't know if it was distracting, but whatever.
It's great. It's great. Very festive.
Has been wonderful seeing all three of my friends. Neal, I hope you make it back to Buffalo Dreams.
Yeah,
soon.
I would love to go back. Yeah.
These past years, George, maybe we got to show your documentaries.
I can send you one.
So we'll have to discuss that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great seeing you, George. Great seeing you again. Yeah.
Great meeting you, Neal, but great seeing these guys. I mean, we spent a lot of time like in a war, we were
in the trenches. Yeah.
We were in the trenches, we're in the foxhole.
We served together.
I have to choke the torture the puppet. But it's great to see we're alive and we're here and we're still doing stuff, and that's great.
And doing shtick.
Shtick!
Lots of shtick!
Doing
What,
shtick!
are you kidding me? Of course. I'm so happy.
Yeah, and thanks everyone tuning out. A lot of people posted stuff in the chat, and I was happy to see that. And I really liked the movie, and it was fun to watch again. People go out and check it out. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch. I Was a Teenage Zombie.
You can see my hair.
HBO Max
and Craig's hair as well.
Yes, and the Curse of the Boom Shadow.
My
Exactly.
color was there.
And you had color. Boy, did
Yes.
you have color. Did you work with David Caruso at the movie theater?
No, but I was going to say the other person who passed through the cinemas, who was there when both Robert and I were there, who would be of interest to Neal, would be James Lorenz from Street Trash and Frankenhooker. And he was at SVA at the same time as me. And from the theater, I kind of avoided him because he was just this guy walking around doing these weird voice imitations. And I was just like, what a weird guy. Yeah. And then I saw one of his short films at SVA, and it was great. And when I heard that he basically stole Street Trash and that they added a bunch of footage with him, I wasn't the least bit surprised. But he was like separate from us. He just was under the same roof at the same time.
Yeah, I once actually he got me so angry, because I was older, because I had been a painting major, and I wrote a paper for William K. Everson to keep my scholarship afloat. And
William K. Everson.
The great William K. Everson.
Talked about Everson and Joan Braderman.
There you go. I mean, we had some good people. So I got so angry at James Lorenz that I picked him up over my head and I started screaming at him. And then everyone was looking at me like, you picked him up? Like, what? And I got so upset, I walked out of the room. But he was very annoying. And I just felt like, what is this guy going to do? What the hell's wrong with him? Because he is a very quirky fellow. And it was surprising to see him on the Emmy Awards, winning an Emmy for Best Supporting Actor on a TV show. It was like a big surprise. Like, he actually turned this into it's shtick.
But the funny thing about that story, George, is you are not a tall man.
No.
How did you pick it? You guys were like the same height. How did
he was like your weight, right? So at that time, he was like 120 pounds, right. And I could lift 120 pounds, and I lifted him, and he started. The two of us are screaming, like he's afraid, and I'm like insane. Like I almost never lose my temper. And he just pushed all the buttons nonstop because he's a nudgy guy. Like he'd walk around the movie theater doing,
all these weird voices would come out.
And he'd be talking to himself.
Well, he was rehearsing shtick.
Exactly. He was creating the James Lorenz experience.
Went on to have a career. I did bring him with Frumkus to Buffalo once to show some films. Liked him very much. I would actually like to work with him if I ever got the budget to do a SAG film.
Yeah, because the SAG rules are not as favorable as they once were.
No, it's impossible. Sorry, Neal.
No, I was just getting something ready here. But
is it nice? What are they saying? Are they talking
about
the
chat? Oh yeah, no, the chat's been great. They've Sue Fi says I would love to see some of George's documentaries.
February, Billy Strayhorn, Lush Life on PBS, your local PBS station. And if they're not showing it at your local PBS station, call them up and say, if you want my $10 for my PBS app to work, put this movie on. Because February is when they play that sort of thing. And it's Rob Levy and I made this film. We spent documentaries are a long slog. So it's like we worked a month and 2 weekends when I was a teenage zombie, and I worked 5 years on Billy Strayhorn. I'm on 6 years on Willie Tyler, and I did 10 years or more on the Jones Brothers. So it's passion. Eventually you make some money, but if you were to get paid an hourly rate, you realize that it cost you like $200 an hour to make the film by the time you make any money. But it's about telling a story that means something to you.
And by the way, Greg, I was not trying not to pay attention. When I look this way, I have multiple screens to do the show, and I read the chat over on this screen. That's over here.
I wasn't even looking at you. I just realized that I had gone off.
Oh, no worries. Okay, I was reading.
What's amazing is that Greg looks like a grown man now. The last time I saw him, he looked like a teenager.
That's true. Well, I think I was 19.
Well, it's a good reason then.
Yeah.
Jimmy McGuire, this is so much fun. You guys are all hilarious, and the behind the scenes stories were so cool to hear. Fuzzball Productions, I'll be rewatching it with all of this new knowledge. And Sue again, yes, great, great to be alive. Yes, that was in reference earlier. You said everyone's alive. So.
It's great to be alive. I'm glad. I'm so happy that at least the three of us are. Oh, I want to plug something. Can I plug something?
Yeah, of course.
I write for a blog called itcamefromhollywood.net. And they pretty much, one of the things that I like about work now is when somebody says, I want you to do something for me, and you can do whatever the hell you want to do. And so I've been writing, sometimes I write about something I did, or it turns out I have a lot of knowledge about silent films, which I really didn't know I had until I wanted to make sure that they were correct. And so I'd go back and do the research after I wrote the piece, and I'd be like, wow, I knew that. How did I know that? And I have a big collection of photographs from silent movies and production of silent movies. And I will write about those movies. I must have at some point heard a story from some old guy, because we used to get like silent screen actors in the movie theater that we worked at. I worked the premiere of a movie called Ghost Story, which had Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Lillian Gish and Fred Astaire. And so I was a candy girl entertaining the three of them while they were waiting. And Fred Astaire's wife was much younger, and she was horsey. And the three of them were talking like old friends. And this younger woman, she must have gone to the bathroom like 11 times. And, she was like, are you sure? Is this butter? And I said, no, it's partially hydrogenated soybean oil with the artificial yellow flavor. And she was like, oh, don't put it on my popcorn, But it's it was a great time. And some of these stories I probably got them firsthand, and they became like stuck in my head. So it's a really great blog. It's a lot of fun, and I met them from, I was a teenage zombie, actually. They didn't work on the film, but they asked me a lot of questions about it. Rob Freeze, the editor, asked me a lot of questions, and I answered them.
Good thing.
To check that out. Yeah,
you got the answers right.
Yeah,
let's hope.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have that free reign.
That's right.
One of the coolest theater experiences was a few years ago. Well, I guess it's more than a few years ago. It was several years ago. For Halloween, they showed the silent Phantom of the Opera with the Boston Orchestra playing the music, and that was like one of the coolest experiences for me.
So cool.
Movie theater. Yeah,
I like when they do that. You mentioned Athalia. I think I worked at the Metro when they did a Buster Keaton festival and brought in the organist, and that was really cool.
It's so cool when you get the feeling for what that was like. I love silent film when you've got like live music, like that guy playing the organ like it's a hockey game, but it's not. It's Buster Keaton getting knocked around, and it's really magic. I live in Harlem, and about 2 blocks from my house is what's left of the first building that was made specifically to show movies in New York City. And it's now a hybrid, which everybody's doing something where they can make money. It's a pediatrician's office that is also a graffiti art gallery. And every like 6 weeks, he has the entire thing painted white, and then graffiti artists come and they graffiti up the whole place. And kids come in. His justification is that the kids grow up in a neighborhood where there's a lot of graffiti, and it can be art. So here's art inside as well. But on the top of the facade of the front portion, where you would walk in, is a medallion, and it has a hand cranked film camera on the very top. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh, what is this building? And then I realized that there was a time when the entire block, Broadway, where I live, all the way up to the bridge where we used to go for I Was a Teenage Zombie, was filled with all these movie theaters. And it was called the Upper Broadway Corridor, and it was considered off Broadway. So my grocery store was the Majestic Theater, and Mae West did one of her out of town runs for the play Sex there. The Warner Brothers built the grade school in my neighborhood because their brother, who made The Jazz Singer, died up here because he got a sinus infection, because he was trying to make sure that his brothers didn't steal the sound system and sell it and recut The Jazz Singer as a silent film. Why they would do that, who knows? But it's where they showed it the first time, was right here. And so there's the RKO Hamilton, which has naked topless women holding their boobs on the outside, and they had women protesting it when they opened it in 1930. It's, you know, it's just an interesting little aside, but I love this old crap, obviously, and I gave you some old crap.
I'm glad that we've talked about theaters so much, because I'm fascinated with theaters. And here in the great city of Buffalo, we had the Vitagraph Theater, which was the first dedicated movie theater in the country. The building wasn't built for it, but they devoted space into it, and it was the first historically first movie theater. Yeah,
fantastic. Well,
yeah, it's good.
Right, Vitagraph started in Buffalo, didn't it? Before it moved to Brooklyn.
Yep.
Those guys worked like we did on Zombies.
We need to do something to roll back the migration of churches into movie theaters. We need to reverse that. We need more movie theaters, fewer churches in them. Well, yeah.
You know, on Flatbush Avenue, they actually redid one. They put it back to a theater.
Oh, that's great. I love to hear that.
It's called the King Theater. Look it up. It is, I took an early date, like a 6th grade or a 7th grade date to see the Poseidon Adventure. And I think the girl was expecting some action from me, but the movie was just so hypnotic. I was completely lost, and I ignored her, and she didn't talk to me again until 7th grade.
I had something like that happen to me once too.
Such a wonderful film.
Watch the movie.
And it was a palace. And it was just amazing. Just a palace. So they do special shows. They did Mystery Science Theater did like a week in New York, and they did the show there, the live show. But it's beautiful. Look it up, the King Theater. But all those theaters on Flatbush all looked like that at one time.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, all over the country, this whole multiplex plague, what it's done to so many beautiful theaters.
Yeah, I was glad. My favorite theater in the Boston area, it's actually in Brookline, Coolidge Corner Theater, and I think it's there since the 20s, the 1920s, not the 2020s. And but they thought it was going to close during the pandemic, but people sent in money, and it stayed open, and it's doing good. It's doing good again. I go there for a lot of weird midnight movies, and they do.
Yeah, good. So they've preserved the interior somewhat.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think they put in new seats as all, but yeah.
It's kind of frustrating here in South Pass. There's a theater called the Rialto, which you've seen in a bunch of movies and TV shows. It's always like the empty abandoned theater on Fair Oaks, and now it's, you know, a church has taken over it, and it really frustrates me because there's been these movements to like save the Rialto, and South Pasadena is a very rich little enclave, and they couldn't get it together to save this movie theater from the encroaching church.
Were they able to save the Cinerama Dome out there, or did that go away?
I think it's still there. I don't think it's open.
The building's there. It's closed. And so many of those beautiful Hollywood theaters. I had it. My wife never wants to go to LA, and I finally prevailed upon her to come with me to LA. And I said, look, at least a full quarter of our marriage, I've been in the city of Los Angeles, and you've never come here. So you're going to come with me this time. And so we came, and I wanted to, you know, so I gave her the Cinerama Dome. We went and watched the stupid movie in the Cinerama Dome, but it's such a cool place. And these beautiful old theaters, you know, like the Chinese theater is beautiful, but that Hollywood area just has these gorgeous old movie theaters that are just falling apart. And it's a town filled with millionaires.
Yeah, but they hate
houses all day.
They hate movies. That's the thing. New York is a movie town. LA is not a movie town. It's a movie. It's the business of movies, but not movies. Nobody likes movies out here, which is maddening.
You told me that once before years ago, and I passed that on to my friend Chris Ray, Fred Olin Ray's son, who's an LA filmmaker. And he said, bullshit, I go see every movie that comes out, and he rattled off the title of every film in release, and he had gone to see every one of them. So there are some people.
Yeah, no, the people are here. You know, it's just not generally the way of it. You know, everyone is like, they'll go see movies at the screening that they worked on, but they're just not interested for the most part. And I actually, when I got my job at USC, I had an interview with a very famous writer. And he said, yeah, I don't go to movies anymore. I don't go to the movie theaters anymore. I was like, I go. I go every chance I get. This is, of course, pre-pandemic, but it's just, there's just a burnout up here that's not great.
I'm going to confess. Screeners have screwed up my movie going habits. To go to the theater to pay, okay, I'm a little old, so I can get a senior citizen's ticket, which is only $3 savings, but it's a lot when you go with, and so, I really wait. Like half the movies that I would normally want to see in the theater, like if they're close personal things, I'll wait to see if the screeners come for that movie. I'll wait. Like I don't want to invest going to the movies and seeing it if it's not going to give me something that I need the movie for. Like I need to have, if I'm going to spend the sizable amount, and luckily my kid's in vet school, so he's never around to go to the movies, but when I would go with him and a friend and my wife and, my nephew and whatever, and we, I buy 6 tickets, 8 tickets, now I'm in for like 150, and then, popcorn, candy, we got to have that. So we're, stuffing them in our pockets. So we sneak in with everything. And it's just, I need to have that extra. I need that only a movie can give you.
Yeah, no, exactly. New York City, when we were working at the movie theater, people would line up around the block to get into Cinema 2, and it was snowing, and they would say, "Are you going to let us in? It's snowing." And we'd say, "Hey, we can't claim your wardrobe for you." Yeah. and they just went right around the corner. And now I go to like the first showing of a movie, and I have no problem getting in. I went to see Glass Onion in the theater and just waltzed right in. No problem getting in. No one's waiting outside. It's just a different time and a different place.
Yeah, it hasn't bounced back from the pandemic. For one thing, the art house crowd is gone. It's never coming back. It's just so sad that these theaters we're talking about that we worked at, the specialized field, it's dead. Whatever there is going to streaming, unless it's Downton Abbey the movie, pretend art film. They're just not coming back. And I watched the Searching for Mr. Rugoff documentary, which is about Cinema 5. I watched it about a month ago, and I've been profoundly depressed over the state of not just those theaters, but what's happening now with streaming and theatricals. And now we're seeing that everything migrated to the streaming platforms. And now all of a sudden they're cutting shows out and they're doing crazy things. And that whole thing that had absorbed the industry, it's now changing so fast that we don't even know what that's going to be.
It's like, if you remember, like when we were kids, right? Nobody had a computer. And if you did, you played Pong on it.
Yeah.
And, exactly. And, nobody had, your phone had a wire on it. All your data was thrown on in front of your house, left there in a big book with lots of pages in it that had every information about your family in it, your parents, whatever, your address, your phone number, your zip code was all there in a book left out on the street. And, so the world changed so dramatically from like 1983 to now, right? It's insane. And streaming is the same sort of thing. It's like CDs, right? You can't charge 3 times as much for something you can make yourself. You can copy yourself, right? And you can't have 200,000 streaming channels because you had 50 cable channels and there was still nothing on. And now you have 200,000 channels and there ain't nothing on either because it's just too much to figure it out. So you look, Disney has like 6 different streaming platforms, right? Well, they're going to have to consolidate those. Yeah. NBC is going to have to consolidate those. We don't need Peacock and Universal and all these other things. We just need one. And like, give us, 200 titles a month so we can go through them if we really want them, you know? And I think we're in a golden age of television now, but I yearn for an hour and a half movie. I'll even take a 2-hour movie.
I think the golden age of television is ending now because of what's happening with these streamers all of a sudden, HBO Max and these different things. I think they're killing something big time.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the best shows I have ever seen in my entire freaking life in the last like 3 years. I saw this Andrew Garfield show, Under the Clouds of Heaven. Did you see this?
No, I didn't see it yet. No.
Oh my God. Yeah. Hulu. It's amazing. It's not just good. It's amazing. It's a relationship you would never see. It's a dynamic you would never see. And they tell you the entire story of the Mormon church. And nothing seems false. Everything feels right about the show. It's an amazing show. And it's just like, just the people they're giving exposure to, like Reservation Dogs. Those kids are hysterical. They're amazing. And they shoot it with I mean, it's amazing. And there was one I really enjoyed called We Are Lady Parts about Muslim women in a punk rock band. Very entertaining. But just people and things and stories that we haven't heard in this television has become, it's such an intimate experience. And this big constriction is it's gonna put the effort back on writers to come up with good programming for these streamers to do. And they can't offer everything, and I think we don't need these shows where, where like you let's get 7 spoiled housewives from Dubuque, Iowa, and put them in a fancy apartment and then just watch the crazy shit happen. Because what happens is the production manager says, she said you were fat in the last episode. You're going to let her get away with that? You called me fat. And there's a fist fight. Oh, that's great television. No. And
a lot of those shows, though. A lot of those shows.
Well, because you don't have to pay a writer. The producer's the writer. Horrible. But, I
now they have above deck, below deck.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Garbage men of the, Las Vegas, Hey, what'd you find? Oh, I found this head. Oh, what do we do with it? I don't know. Is it pretty? Nah. It's got maggots. Okay, next.
Kids today.
I mean, I would love to we're going to give you a 2.5-hour Marvel movie. That's going to cost you $25. Or you could see, an hour and, 60, an hour and 30-minute, mystery, with Bulldog Drummer, and that costs you, $6 to see at the movie theater. I'd be at the movie theater every day if I had like an option like that. Even the early show is like $14 here.
Mm-hmm. I go to the movies multiple times a week, but I do use the AMC app, and it's $22 or something, and then you get to see up to 3 movies a week, which even if you see 2 movies, it pays for it. So I go every week and see 3 movies.
You see a lot. You see,
I see everything, and it is kind of fun because I'll see movies that I would probably not go see in the theater. Because it's like, oh, well, I still have one pass. I'll just go see something. And sometimes it's something I don't care about, and it turns out not to be very good. But a lot of times it'll be something I might not have ever seen, and it turns out to be a really good movie.
Well, I generally don't go to movies, and it's because I do load the multiplexes, and I don't like a lot of the movies that are being made right now. And even the ones that I end up liking, I'm perfectly happy catching on a streamer. To me, sitting in those multiplexes is just not the experience that I grew up loving. And I hate the whole thing from the 20 minutes of pre-show commercials.
Well, that they show a half hour. And so I always I know that it's going to be a half hour of commercials beforehand. So I know I can come in late if I have to.
What's great is sometimes if the commercials before the movie are long enough, you can get in a movie in before your movie. That's what I'm looking for.
I do a lot of that on my I watch something really I watch Star Wars on my phone.
Mm-hmm. When I'm figuring out what movies to see, I'll know this one's, it says it starts at 2 and the other one ends at 2:05, but I'll have a half hour, so I know I'm not actually going to miss it.
Let me watch the beginning of this film, right? When we all worked at the movie theater just sort of at the same time, but they used to line them up. It was a horribly hot day. And this woman walks in and she says, I'm here with my good friend, and she's older than me. And can we sit inside? So I said, yes. So I put them down in the steps, because when Katharine Hepburn tells you her old friend wants to sit down in the movie theater because it's too hot, you say yes. And the assistant manager had no idea who she was and told her to leave. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't do that.
The name of the assistant manager?
Yeah. Huh?
The name of the...
I don't remember, but he was the guy with a lot of problems. And she smacked him. And I was like, he threw her out. He said, you're going to wait on that line. You're not getting here. And I don't want to ever see her, until the show breaks. And so I went around and got her from the back, and I put her in the theater, because the movie had ended by that point and we weren't ready to let her in. So I let them in. But I said to the guy later, I said, dude, you got smacked by Katharine Hepburn. She's like a 5-time Academy Award nominated actress. It's like the big deal, man. He's like, who cares? And I was like, he's in the wrong business. Like,
it was Frank LaBianco, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe. It's but it's like, why are you doing this job? Right? That's what those beautiful theaters were about. That's what working at for Rugoff and for your uncle was a movie guy, and in the theaters, and that was like your late uncle. I'm sorry, and that was the thing. These guys it's like the guy shoveling shit behind the elephant. Yeah, but I'm in show business, so every single person at Candy Girls, they worked in the movie business. We all felt like we worked in the movie business. I became a projectionist for a brief period of time, and I made this jump from projectionist to camera operator in IATSE, and it was like kind of monumental, right? Like I did this thing, but truth be told, I became a projectionist because it was the only way I could figure out how I was going to get in the union to actually do anything I wanted to do. But I could only have done that in the movie theater when we were coming up.
But what you want, I think you became a projectionist to torture the puppet. I think
that's right.
Yeah, I think there's very few jobs in the movie industry that allow that privacy, and I think you found it, torturing the puppet.
Well, they made me do vacation replacement, so I worked in all the like the Adonis Theater was gorgeous. It had cherubs everywhere. They use it as a background in the Madonna sex book, but the projectionist was like, okay, whatever you do, don't look in the audience. I go, what do you mean? So he takes me to the booth, and we're up in the booth, and it's like Playboy centerfolds are plastered, and they get like everywhere. There's naked women everywhere. Don't look in the audience. Okay, whatever you do, just don't do it. You can look at the picture, but I wouldn't. Right? But look. So, of course, the first day I had a flashlight. I'm looking down in the audience. I'm going, oh, my God. Audience, screen. Audience, screen. Is this like this every night? And the woman who was like the cashier candy person, because they had candy there, but it was like 40 years old. It was like Necco wafers and, things that you don't see that often anymore. And it's just like, no one buys candy, but we have to have it, right? We have to have it. So I do both jobs. I said, but is what's going on in there now what always happens? She goes, well, I don't really know, but I assume so. I said, what do you mean? She goes, oh, we find all kinds of wonderful things afterwards. Like what? Wallets, like pictures of guys' kids, like they found a wedding ring in there, and the guy came in like all nervous. I was with a friend, like you didn't happen to find, and the girl went, a wedding ring? He was like, yes. Here, let's see. Which one of these is yours? Because it was the early 80s. It was pretty wild. But, those beautiful palaces just show one movie at a time. Oh. And we still had the studios in Manhattan then. We had
single screens, and even twins were still great.
Exactly. That's okay. I mean, the Cinema 1 and 2 is now the Cinema 1, 2, and 3.
Cinema 1, 2, 3rd Avenue. At least it's still got some of the ambience preserved upstairs. It's recognizable.
Now, where they built the third theater was in the backstage area of the Cinema 1. They kind of reconfigured it all. But I cannot tell you how many nights I slept in that backstage area. We had a couch back there, and that's where all the boxes with the letters.
Yep.
Because you used to have to put the letters up, but it wasn't like a printed sheet you stick in there like they do now. Good times.
Good times.
Good times.
Neal, I'm gonna cut you some slack.
All right, I was going to show you just real quick. This is the Coolidge Corner Theater. The theater I was talking about. It's very cool in Brookline.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Look at that. Oh my God.
So yeah, I go up there, do midnight movies. They show other movies too, but I do the midnight movies. And Halloween, they do a 12-hour marathon from midnight till noon the next day, which is a very fun time. And then
that's awesome.
They take a big picture with everyone survives.
How are the seats? Are the seats comfortable?
That is the one thing they actually did improve on. That's not the original the seats, and it is much more comfortable than when I first started to go.
We used to live in Maine for part of the year, and in Maine, we used to go to a theater called the Criterion, which was one of those theaters where they get a different movie every night, and it was built in like 1916, and it was the same seats. And it was like, if you remember your auditorium in grade school, it was like that, but it had like a piece of cloth over the wooden part. Yeah, and they were so uncomfortable, especially if it was like a really long movie.
Yeah.
Oh, my ass hurts.
I almost took a job at one of those theaters.
Really?
One of those vacation resort Maine theaters where you make up a print every day and there's a new film and only 2 people run it, and something came up so that I couldn't do it, but it would have been an experience.
Yeah, it was a mother and son ran the theater, and the mother's friend would come in and do the candy. And it was a different movie every night. It was great because we would go to the movies like 4 times a week, but
yeah,
it was so uncomfortable. But
when they did the 50th anniversary for 2001, and I was there, there's a much older guy was sitting next to me, and he told me he was at that same theater when the movie released originally. And I was like, that's pretty wild. And he had to come and watch it at the same theater for the 50th anniversary.
That's cool. Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he's still alive too.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, he was at the time. Yeah, this is a few years. This was pre-pandemic, but he was then. It was a great time. But yeah, I think seeing on the big screen is the best way to see any movie.
Yep. No, I just
seen 2001 3 times on the theater, and each time was a new restoration.
How did you like the last one?
I have to say my favorite version is the one that I watched on my laptop, which was Steven Soderbergh's experimental cut, where he cut it down to 100 minutes. I loved it.
Very cool.
I mean, I've always loved the experience, but I enjoyed seeing somebody cut it down to 100 minutes.
Yeah,
Greg, you and I went to the sequel. We watched the sequel with 2010. And as I
Keir Delay, he's still alive.
Yeah, Keir Delay, not gone tomorrow. But yeah, no, Greg, you were like, this is a much better movie than 2001. There are characters here.
Robert, I have to say, as I've said this on Neal's show in the past, that I saw every great horror film of the 80s when it came out, and I never liked any of them the first time. It's only through repeated viewings that I've come to love them and respect them. But I
hear you got to see a movie twice before you see it at all.
Yeah, I've heard
That's what Joan Braderman
said. Well, when you mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre, at that same theater I mentioned, I saw it was a pretty bad print, 35 millimeter print there, but it actually added to it. And then I saw it at the same theater when they restored it, and it looked great, but I thought it was much worse than the bad print, because everything was very bright, and actually I think took away from the movie. Not all movies are like that, but that one in particular I thought worked better.
I don't think every film needs the deluxe ultra H4K 10,000 treatment where you see the warts and I like a little grime.
A little shudder.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
movie in particular, it definitely works with the
Well,
grime because it.
Have you guys noticed this when you're watching a movie today? If it's shot digitally, have you noticed just how bad people's skin is?
Oh yeah.
Like you're going,
Yeah.
wow, look at the zits. I never noticed that. I've seen this movie 15 times and I never noticed the zits.
The makeup artists have not figured it out yet. They've not quite figured out digital.
The resolution is so great. I mean, the things we used to do to make women look pleasant. We would put some stocking. You had to buy like a Fojal, a French stocking that cost you like $200, but you're only cutting off little bits and you stick it on the very back of the lens so that would just soften them, and the film would soften them further so you wouldn't notice these imperfections. And now those cameras, this 8K image is so crystal sharp, you could probably focus it on your blood vessels and you could see them. And it's too much. And so now
makeup is more necessary now than it's been for a long time.
What is?
Makeup.
Yeah. Oh, so important. And now they do it. They introduce the airbrush for makeup, which is pretty spectacular. They can come up with all these looks that they just spray on the actress so that it's dry when they're done. They're ready to go. Like they do a little done, go.
Moisten. We've come a long way since the oatmeal days.
Oh yeah.
When I brought Robert to Buffalo to shoot Slime City Massacre in 2010, I didn't pay to have a makeup artist because I just didn't have it in the budget. And Brooke Lewis was Robert's co-star in those flashback scenes. And she was like, I will pay for a makeup artist because I know what these HD cameras do when they zoom in on the pores, and I'm not going to look like that. And she was right. So she was the one person on the film who had a makeup artist, and she looks damn good in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anyone else looks bad because of the fancy cameras, but she knew what she was talking about.
Men can handle that, looking rugged, looking raw, much easier. I did a music video, and it was a girl singer, and she said, I don't want any makeup. I said, but I have to put makeup on you. And she said, what do you mean? He goes, well, I'm shooting in very low light because I'm doing rear screen projection, and I need your face to reflect. And your skin doesn't reflect as much. Like I need an image. So we put makeup on her. I did one take with the makeup, and then she got so furious she wiped it all off. And so I cut the music video, and she comes in to look at it, and she's looking at it. She goes, why do I look sick? And I'm like, because you wiped the makeup off on you. I wasn't making you look sexy. I was just making you look like you're alive. Like look at the drummer. Look how good he looks. And the bass player and the guitar, they all look great. And you look sick. That's what happens. You need to have it. But now, there's a whole new class of engineer who does, who after you shoot the film, the shading grading gets done, and they change the colors and they pump your blue eyes so they're really blue. You notice how blue everybody's eyes are? There's a guy whose job that is, the colorist. And they come in and they do all this stuff. It's wild. But they're losing, right now we're in a technology period where the story is at risk to what they can do.
They'll always come back to story, though. Always.
They have to.
Yeah. There's just nothing to keep people interested otherwise.
I hired a colorist for Guns of Eden for the first time. It was a guy who had come out to my festival a couple of years before. He impressed me, and it was one of the best things I did. And what he did, besides giving it sort of a 70s look, is, we shot this film in the summer, but we were still losing the light at the end of every day. And the film takes place in one day. And yet we shot for 15 days. So there's 15 scenes where we're shooting in magic hour. And he was able to take the finished film and figure out what the hours were of each scene. And it's beautifully consistent as the lighting changes to get us where we end up.
That's beautiful. That's great.
Really impressive.
That's very impressive.
Yeah. And where can you see Guns of Eden?
Well, you can see it on Amazon. $3.99 to rent or $7.99 to buy as a download.
A bargain.
Google Play. All the usual suspects, but not on Voodoo for some reason, and I'm not sure what the story is there.
Screw Voodoos. Who cares?
We don't need Voodoo.
That.
Well, they rejected my credit card last time I tried to rent on them, so I agree.
Done. I'm done with them. I don't have them, and I'm done with them.
Don't have them. Don't want them.
Don't want them. Definitely don't want them. That's how it goes with me. They go one strike. That's it.
Hey, I'm the kind of guy, you know.
Tell me about it. I know you.
That's just
and
how I
you
am.
that guy. But that's right. All right.
Well, Greg, you have George's number now, so you can call him up in the future.
Well, we Facebook message a lot, but yeah, we have things to discuss.
Things, talking, stuff. It happens. Now I got a cell phone, so that's good.
Robert, I haven't mailed it yet, but
sweet.
This is your Slime City action figure.
That is awesome.
Woo!
That I will be sending to you.
That is so awesome. The perfect Christmas gift. Needs no wrapping.
It'll come in time for Valentine's Day, but it's a Christmas present.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
That's very awesome. Cool. Well, where does are those for sale too, or is that just one for
a guy? You know, it's a one-off. A guy did it and he shared it. I guess with my Instagram, which my wife and daughter run because I don't understand Instagram. And I said, "Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Tell him I want to buy it." He said, "No, he'll give it to you for free." I said, "Well, I need a second one because I have to get one for Robert." So I paid a little bit, but still a bargain.
Bargain.
It's thinking of me. That's awesome.
Where was he? This guy? Where did he make them from?
Oh, I have no idea what the details are, but he does them for all the movies he loves. So he's got a whole series of characters.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. All right. Well, this has been awesome, and it's a little.
Thank you so much. Yeah, a little bit.
A little over 2 hours.
We gave you a bonus half hour for the DVD.
All right, very good.
This show is longer than George can tolerate. He's like 90 minutes. 90 minutes. That's it.
That's
now,
it.
An interview that could be 3 hours, but
he's sitting in his special chair. He's okay.
I'm in my special chair.
He looks very comfortable. Yeah.
The story of a special chair.
Yeah, it's not my special chair. It's we had an apartment we rented, and when they moved to California, he said, "Do you want this, $1,200 Aeron chair? I'm just going to throw it out." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, you can bring it up to my office. Help me out here." Perfect.
Neal, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to
Merry
you.
Christmas, and thanks for bringing the holiday to us.
Yeah,
this look forward to the return of Troy.
Yeah, he'll be back next week.
I always miss him.
Yeah, he's
I'm probably the only person who asks about him, and I always miss him.
people like
everybody asks about Troy. I have no idea who he is, but I ask.
He's my brother and co-host here on the show. But
excellent.
Yeah. He's working weird hours currently, but he'll be back to his normal schedule and be back on the show next week.
Good.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Gentlemen, great seeing you both.
Great seeing you too, Greg, George. Wonderful.
Robert, we're running out of movies to do reunions on Neal's show for.
That's true. Where's the Undying Love reunion?
We've got Undying Love.
Yeah, we got to do that.
Excellent. I didn't have a cell phone, so.
Or we just talk about theaters next time. We'll figure something out.
Thank you to everybody who listened.
Yes. Thank you all, and the contributions were much appreciated.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
very fun. It's very fun. And thanks for a couple bucks from people too. That was cool.
Yay! Keep donating and practicing.
All right. So this is a new part. I'm gonna have music of the month here. So I'm gonna play us out with some music. You guys can stay for it. You don't have to. But Theophobia, they sent in a song for this one. It is Will You Still Love Me When I'm Dead? And I thought it was fitting for this show. So
probably.
I'll get this ready and we'll play us out here.
If I cross now too, see I regret nothing when I'm with you. Why won't you throw me a line? I've got a question for you. Will you still love me when I'm through? line. I said, are you okay? And you said, what did I just say? I tried to say you were right, but you had faded away. You left a note with a bouquet. With the light forever luminous. Will you love me when I'm dead? Think I'm gonna scream. Will you love me when my body is anonymous? Oh baby, will you love me when I'm dead? Freak crazy. 2, 4, 6, 8. Can I take you on a date? Love me when my soul no longer sentient. Oh my God. Will you love me when I'm dead? Will you love me when I'm buried underneath the ground? Oh baby, will you love me when I'm dead?
My dog.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
All right. Excellent.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
Great to see you.
Good night.
Bye.
Yeah.